Hi friends, welcome back. You know that feeling when you finish a great novel and just wish someone could read the next part to you? That's exactly why we're here. We already have over 100 novels ready as audiobooks, and if you want your favorite fanfic, or even the next part of a story we've uploaded, I can make it for you. All you need to do is join my Patreon membership. The link is waiting for you in the description. Marvel, Extraordinary Comprehension. Chapter 1, Extraordinary Comprehension, Self-Creating the Origin True Fire Marvelous Art, Shocking Odin. Where is this? Lucci's consciousness awoke from endless chaos. Darkness, yet very warm. That was his only sensation. He tried to open his eyes, only to realize he had no eyes. He tried to move his limbs, only to find he had no body. Yet the strange part was that he could still perceive the space through something like consciousness. He felt a warm, viscous liquid wrapping around him, and beyond it, a hard, smooth, arc-shaped barrier. The whole space formed a perfect oval, airtight. This feels like an egg. A ridiculous thought flashed through Lucci's mind. At that very moment, a cold, vast message, like it came from the beginning of the universe, erupted without warning from the deepest part of his consciousness. Buzz. It was as if enlightenment had struck, like sudden awakening. In that instant, Lucci's consciousness soared without limit. He felt his thinking speed surpass light itself, as though with a single thought he could glimpse all truths. What had been chaotic and vague became clearer than ever before. From the information appearing in his mind, he understood. He had transmigrated, and this power was his golden finger. His comprehension could defy the heavens. In an instant, the world he saw completely changed. That warm, sticky egg fluid was no longer just fluid. It became golden threads winding through his vision. The threads constantly lashed, burned, and released fierce, violent energy. As for the hard eggshell, it was composed of countless denser, more intricate dark red threads, like the finest chains, locking and sealing that raging golden energy within. This was laws. Lucci's consciousness was dragged at once into a staggering, extraordinary realm. Everything in his sight faded away, leaving only the most basic lines behind. He could see that those golden threads were pure, primordial firepower. They destroyed, rampaged, and carried the might to burn everything to ash, as if they were born solely for devastation. Too wild. Too complex. A thought rose in Lucci's heart. This power was like an uncarved, stubborn stone, vast potential, but empty form, powerful, yet without elegance. His extraordinary comprehension was now fully unleashed. Lucci's consciousness seemed to turn into hundreds of millions of invisible giant hands, probing this ocean formed of primordial fire lines. You observe the power of primordial fire. Your comprehension defies the heavens. Analysis begins. You comprehend the burning property of fire. You comprehend the destruction property of fire. You comprehend the light property of fire. You comprehend the wrath property of fire. You are sorting, summarizing, and purifying. Countless black and gray threads symbolizing wrath and destruction were precisely stripped away one by his consciousness, erased, and completely eliminated. The entire process flowed smoothly, without the slightest stagnation. Gradually, the golden sea inside the egg became purer and brighter. In the end, only the two most core, original traits remained. Burning and light. Burning represented the eternal release and circulation of energy. Light represented creation and hope, driving away darkness. This was the most perfect form of flame. Lucci's mind steadied. Then, integrating all the superficial understandings he had in his past life about the universe, energy, and soul, he began to construct his own foundational law, based on this pure source of burning and light. Your comprehension defies the heavens. Combined with your own definition as a transmigrator, you begin creating a foundational cultivation method. The foundation of this method has been established, primordial fire. The core of this method has been established, the soul is eternal, true fire does not extinguish. The operational path of the method is being deduced. Complete. Naming the method. Named for the origin, named for true fire, this method shall be called the Origin True Fire Marvelous Art. Boom. With the method formally named, Lucci's soul seemed to resonate with the flame laws of the entire universe, something mysterious and profound. He didn't even need to deliberately guide it. This newly born foundational law began to operate on its own, with an unrivaled, mystical rhythm. In an instant, outside the eggshell, endless flames surged and gathered, forming a rapidly expanding vortex. At the same time, one of the 9 realms of the cosmos, Muspelheim, a kingdom of fire, an eternally burning world. The sky was a whirlpool of flame. The land was cracked, scorched rock. The air was filled with sulfur and the breath of destruction. Before the Temple of Flame, an earth-shaking battle had just ended. The god King Odin, clad in golden armor and holding the eternal spear Gungnir, stood with countless corpses of fire giants at his feet. Before him, a fire giant with a body like a mountain knelt weakly, panting heavily. The ruler of Muspelheim, Surtur, the fire giant, had lost the blazing crown above his head. The twilight fire clinging to his body, once hot enough to melt divine iron, had dimmed. Bone-deep wounds split his chest, and magma-like blood flowed without end. He had been defeated. Surtur. The Ragnarok you foretold will never come. Odin's voice was low and solemn, echoing through the kingdom of fire like eternal ice. Today, I end your ambition. As he spoke, he raised Gungnir high. The spear tip emitted a cold light that seemed able to split stars, aimed straight at Surtur's head. Despair and resignation flickered in Surtur's eyes. He had no strength left to resist. But at that very moment, a sudden change. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of Muspelheim seemed to be held up by an invisible giant hand. Whether it was the rivers of magma on the ground, the clouds of destruction rolling across the sky, or the fading twilight fire on Surtur's body, all flame power, at this instant, lost control. As if summoned by some supreme existence, it turned into hundreds of millions of streams of true fire, surging madly in one direction. Toward the abyss of the Temple of Flame. It was like 100 rivers returning to the sea, like 10,000 fires bowing and extinguishing. Flame elements that had been violent, chaotic, and full of destructive will now became unbelievably obedient, as if they had found their true king. Seeing this, Odin's pupil suddenly contracted. His raised hand halted. An unprecedented light flared from his single eye as he stared at the ancient, magnificent Temple of Flame. He clearly sensed the fire power around the temple converging at a speed never seen before. Above the temple, a colossal energy vortex covered the heavens. What shook him even more was that at the center of that vortex, a vast, sacred, supreme aura of flame rose toward the sky. That aura was utterly different from Muspelheim's rage and destruction. It was warm and bright, filled with the charm of creation and rebirth, like the most original and pure fire of life in the universe. Before that aura, even a father-level god-king who had fought across the 9 realms for nearly 10,000 years and witnessed the great powers of the cosmos, felt, from the depths of his soul, a sense of insignificance. Shocking. Odin's heart surged like storm waves. What was happening? Could it be that within this Temple of Flame, there was still an existence hidden, one even stronger than Surtur? Chapter 2, God King Odin, shocked. What tier of great might is this, the ultimate cosmos? What is going on? Surtur's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. He was the ruler of the kingdom of fire. How could the power of flame betray him? Hearing that, Odin frowned slightly. What do you mean? Surtur, you don't know what's inside the temple. Inside the temple? Nothing. This has always been my palace. Other than the pedestal of eternal flame, there was nothing. Divine light flashed in Odin's single eye, as if it could pierce through Surtur. Truly. Surtur's gigantic body trembled, as if struggling to remember something. Suddenly, his magma pupils shrank, as though he recalled a detail he had overlooked. An egg. There is an egg. He shouted, thousands of years ago, when I hunted void beasts, I accidentally obtained an egg from a shattered cosmic singularity. Its surface was smooth, and it was so tough that no matter how much force I used, I couldn't break it. Even twilight fire left no trace. I thought it was dead, so I placed it in the temple. Surtur couldn't continue. Shock and disbelief twisted his face. Could the source of this vast power, the one causing visions of heaven and earth and stealing his authority over flame, be that egg he had forgotten for thousands of years? How could that be possible? Odin's brow furrowed even deeper. An egg. Absurd. He had fought across the 9 realms and seen countless strange lives, star-devouring beasts, spirits born from black holes. But no life could possess such terrifying power before it even hatched. This was no mere energy output. It was something that could crush the will and personality of all beings. Keep him under watch. Odin ordered the Asgardian warriors behind him. Ignoring Surtur with Gungnir poised, he walked toward the Temple of Flame, the sanctuary worshipped by 10,000 fires. The warriors behind him felt the solemn pressure emanating from the God King at this moment. They lined up one after another, surrounding the heavily wounded Surtur, not daring even to breathe too loudly. The temple gate stood open, like the gaping mouth of a giant that had decided to devour. The closer Odin got, the more clearly he sensed the essence of that power. Pure. Divine. If Surtur's twilight fire was turbid fire, mixed with destruction, sulfur, death, and countless negative concepts, then the power within this temple was true fire, removing all impurities and leaving only two most primitive, core concepts: burning and light. It did not feel aggressive, yet it was more evolved than any aggressive flame. Because it was not using flame. It was flame itself. The moment Odin stepped into the temple, he saw it. In the deepest part of the temple, beside what had once been Surtur's throne, a golden egg about half a person tall floated silently in midair. It was filled with brilliance. Its surface looked like spiraling galaxies, overflowing with a sacred, noble aura. And the flame power of all Muspelheim had become a visible torrent, swallowed whole. All drawn into the eggshell without even a trace leaking out. That vast aura that had shaken Odin was erupting from this egg. Unexpected, it really is an egg. Odin stood frozen, his eyes blazing with fear and disbelief. He could sense it, the energy aura of this egg was completely different from the chaos, wrath, and destruction of the entire fire realm. It was sacred, creative, overflowing with light's charm. It belonged neither to Muspelheim nor to any realm he knew. At this moment, the God King, who had experienced hundreds of battles and witnessed countless cosmic miracles, felt a storm rise in his heart like never before. He had seen too many flames across the 9 realms. There was Surtur's twilight fire, said to be capable of triggering Ragnarok. In his vault, there was the eternal flame, a wonder that could grant life. But compared to the aura released by the egg before him, none of those flames even qualified. Whether it was twilight fire's final destiny or the eternal flame's authority over life, all of it seemed low-level before this aura. Those were merely applications of specific flame rules, imitations of particular laws. But what this egg symbolized was origin. It transcended elements, transcended rules, pointing directly at the most fundamental source of the universe. Ultimate power. It wasn't about using flame. It was about defining flame. Chapter 3, Odin, this egg, is Asgard's future. The fear and doubt in Odin's eyes receded like a tide, replaced by an ecstasy like a volcanic eruption. It was the ecstasy of discovering a new continent. He had thought a more terrifying enemy than Surtur was hidden in the temple, and he had even been prepared to expend all divine power for a catastrophic war. But now, what enemy? This was clearly a sacred life not yet born, already carrying infinite potential and supreme dignity. Odin's palm trembled slightly. For a god king who ruled the 9 realms with an iron will, this was almost impossible. But he couldn't control it. Because he understood what this egg meant. He himself possessed strength comparable to the All-Father, vast divine power and a long lifespan. But he knew well, he had already touched the ceiling. Taking another step would be difficult. His sons, whether the brave Thor or the clever Loki, had talent, but their future achievements likely would not surpass him. Asgard's glory seemed destined to reach a limit. Yet the egg before him had shattered that upper bound. A being of origin-level power, one who could define laws before laws were even born, if it grew up, its achievements would far exceed his. All-Father. No. Its future would never be limited to father level. It might break through an invisible barrier and reach a realm even Odin himself longed for and could only imagine. In an instant, Odin's gaze changed completely. From fear and shock to cherishing and expectation. He was no longer a conqueror god who subdued all directions. He was like a collector who had seen a rare treasure, like a master who had discovered an unparalleled genius. Through this golden eggshell, it was as if he had already seen Asgard's glory and strength for the next 10,000 years, no, for 10,000 years. I understand, marvelous. Odin could no longer restrain the ecstasy in his heart. A cheerful, deep laugh escaped him, echoing through the temple with unprecedented joy and excitement. He suppressed the pressure of his entire body, stretched out his hand, and gently wrapped the golden egg with pure divine power. As if holding the most precious treasure. The instant his divine power touched the shell, a warm, comfortable, non-repulsed response seeped out from within, like it was satisfied with his kindness. Odin's heart beat even faster. He sensed that the life inside the egg was alive, and possessed the purest spirituality. Solemnly, slowly, he cradled the sacred egg tied to Asgard's future. At this moment, his voice no longer carried only the majesty of a god-king. It bore the solemnity of an oath and a promise, resonating through the entire temple of flame. Whoever you are, wherever you come from today onward, you are a part of Asgard. No, you're not ordinary at all. You will become Asgard's future. Wrapped by Odin's gentle, pure divine power, Loki inside the egg felt an unprecedented peace. This power was utterly different from the violent, mixed flame energy outside, stable and heavy, with an aura of order and protection like the warm sun in winter, nourishing his soul. Right after that, a solemn declaration filled with expectation pierced through the eggshell wall and entered his consciousness clearly. You are my Asgard's future. Asgard. Loki's consciousness was slightly startled. He was extremely familiar with that name. Thor, the god of thunder. Odin, the god-king. Loki. Had he come to the world of Norse mythology? Or even, the familiar world of Marvel? But judging from the goodwill in that voice and the content of the declaration, he should be safe for now. Since he was safe, there was no need to overthink. The origin true fire marvelous art had just been created, now was the best time to consolidate his foundation. With a thought, Loki's consciousness sank once more into the pure golden sea of flame, falling into deep sleep and cultivation. When Odin carried this sacred egg back to Asgard, the golden egg became plain. All visions and holy light were restrained, and it looked like nothing more than a normal dome with a somewhat special texture. Odin, you're back. Queen Frigga greeted him. There was a hint of worry in her eyes, but soon her gaze was drawn to the egg in Odin's arms. This is. Suspicion appeared on Frigga's face. Spoils of war from Muspelheim. An egg. Ha, Frigga, my beloved. Joy was clear on Odin's face as he smiled mysteriously at his wife. Don't underestimate it. This isn't spoils, it's Asgard's treasure. Frigga grew even more confused. Seeing this, Odin stopped teasing and told her everything he had seen and heard at the Temple of Flame, from the wonder of 10,000 fires bowing, to the origin-level flame aura beyond cognition, to his judgment of the egg's future potential. His tone carried excitement and pride, even if he didn't realize it. Frigga listened quietly, her beautiful eyes widening with increasing astonishment. When Odin finished, the knowledgeable, magical goddess finally showed an expression of disbelief. Odin, what you said, is it true? She stepped forward and carefully examined the plain golden egg, doubt in her voice. An egg? How could it defy the heavens? Trigger 10,000 fires bowing. And release that shocking original aura. As Odin's wife, she knew his strength and vision well. If he could use words like shocking and beyond cognition, what kind of terrifying existence would it be? But this egg, no matter how long she sensed it with magic, only felt hard and solid. Nothing special. Haha, you don't believe it. Odin laughed proudly. When the next miracle happens, you'll know whether what I said is true. And Frigga, what I said might even have been an underestimate. Frigga could only nod, still doubtful, watching her husband with an excitement like a child's. Well, even if what you say is true, she asked, where will you put it? In the treasury like the eternal flame? No. Odin shook his head immediately, his expression turning extremely serious. The treasury is where dead things and weapons are stored. He looked down at the egg in his arms, his eyes soft. This is a living sacred life with infinite possibilities. I want to give it the best environment to grow. He raised his head and looked beyond the immortal palace, that majestic existence spanning the 9 realms. I'm preparing to place it beneath the roots of the world tree. Use the energy of the 9 realms to nourish it. And accelerate its growth. Beneath the world tree. Frigga was shocked. That was the core of all Asgard, no, of the 9 realms. Ordinary beings could not even approach. Odin truly wanted to place an unknown origin egg there. She could see it clearly. Odin's obsession with this egg had already reached the point of no return. Chapter 4, My name is Loki, lava as robes, true fire as crown. The world tree, Yggdrasil. It was not a real tree, but the concrete embodiment of cosmic laws and energy. Its branches connected the 9 realms, its roots burrowed deep into the source of fate. When Odin and Frigga arrived at the world tree's energy core area with the golden egg, a vast, ancient breath full of life and law washed over them. To mortals, this breath meant death. Even gods felt immense pressure when touching it. But the instant this aura touched the golden egg, the sleeping Lucci's consciousness trembled, and he woke up immediately. So comfortable. That was Lucci's first feeling. If Odin's divine power was a warm winter sun, then the breath of the world tree was an ocean of life that nourished all things. He saw countless radiant lines composed of laws, life, space, time, fate, flowing slowly around him, containing incomparable mystery. And these powers were of tremendous benefit to him. He couldn't waste this chance. Lucci decided in an instant, without the slightest hesitation. Origin True Fire Marvelous Art, run at full power. Boom. In this moment, the quiet golden egg became like a black hole, swallowing everything. Driven by cultivation, Lucci's soul frantically devoured the surrounding world tree energy at a terrifying speed. World tree energies that originally represented different laws, flowing like separate rivers, entered the egg. And were forcibly analyzed, decomposed, and purified by the True Fire Marvelous Art, ultimately transforming into the purest source, the power of flame. Under this endless energy infusion, Lucci's soul rose and grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. He felt his power expanding violently, until the hard eggshell could no longer bind him. It's time to create my body. Lucci's consciousness was crystal clear. Using his past life appearance as a blueprint, he began to visualize his body within his soul. With his visualization, the immense power of primordial flame started to converge, following his will to construct bones, meridians, flesh and blood, internal organs. A perfect divine body, made from the pure origin of flame, rapidly took shape inside the egg. The process continued at high speed. Extremely pure true fire mist with origin quality flowed slowly over the surface of his divine body, as if alive. It intertwined and wove automatically, transforming into a solemn, luxurious golden robe, engraved with mysterious patterns of the birth and death of cosmic stars. True fire rose into the air, gathered above his head, and became a crown, simple in shape, yet noble and unparalleled. Lava as robes. True fire as crown. The moment the divine body and crown fully formed, Lucci's consciousness and soul merged completely. He opened his eyes. What kind of eyes? Black and deep, as though holding endless starry skies, without a trace of the innocence a child should have, only cold indifference and detached insight. He used his past life name to forge his eternal true name in this life. A grand will born from the egg declared his existence. My name is Lucci. Rumble. At the instant his true name was established, the world tree outside seemed to receive some kind of guidance and suddenly shook. Centered on the golden egg, a huge, violently pulsing energy vortex formed. Visible torrents of world tree energy turned into colorful floods, frantically being sucked into the egg and devoured. The entire core region's energy began to boil. Terrifying fluctuations spread through the space, reflecting in the skies above Asgard's immortal palace and dyeing them a magnificent fiery red. This is... Frigga was already dumbfounded by the shocking scene before her, her elegant face filled with disbelief. It was real. Odin hadn't lied to her. No. This egg was tens of thousands of times more outrageous than Odin's description. It could actually absorb the world tree's original power directly. And at an absurd speed. It was practically eating the world tree as its tonic. Even more shocking to both Frigga and Odin. At this moment, the same clear thought appeared in their minds simultaneously. My name is Lucci. Odin and Frigga looked at each other, seeing infinite shock in each other's eyes. This was truly a sacred life born from the source. Before birth, it already possessed complete self-awareness. And it even gave itself a true name. This was utterly beyond their cognition. Odin tightly held Frigga's hand, feeling the trembling in her palm, yet his own heart did not calm at all. Lucci. He repeated the name silently, light shining in his single eye. Chapter 5, Asgard's Fourth Prince, Lucci Odinson. Beloved by Queen Frigga, and Thor's challenge. Asgard. The people of the divine realm were enjoying another peaceful afternoon. Shops lined the streets. Gods and mortals lived together. A thriving scene. Yet in recent days, a strange piece of news had quietly spread, passed from the mouths of those who had fought in Muspelheim. Hey, did you hear? His Majesty the God King brought back something astonishing from the fire realm. Of course. Apparently, an egg. Yes. An egg. They say His Majesty values it immensely. An egg. What use could that be? No one knows. But to make the God King pay that much attention, it can't be simple. Countless Asgardians discussed it, filled with curiosity and doubt. An egg, no matter how magical, what could it really do? At this moment, a mutation arrived without warning. Boom. A violent tremor from the direction of the World Tree spread across all Asgard. Everyone felt the ground beneath their feet shake slightly. Energy particles in the air activated and began to go wild. What's happening? An earthquake. Look toward the World Tree. Countless residents dropped what they were doing and rushed out into the streets, looking up at the majestic tree that connected heaven and earth. The next second, everyone sucked in a breath, faces full of shock. By the gods, what is that? A colossal energy vortex had appeared around the World Tree. Bands of colorful energy light coiled and flew like dragons, an extremely magnificent sight. Even more astonishing, Asgard's eternal blue sky was now wrapped in a blazing, vivid red. This aura, it's flame. What incredibly pure flame power. I've never seen such sacred fire. As everyone talked and doubted, a veteran who had just returned from the battlefield stared at the burning red sky, his body trembling with excitement as he shouted. It's because of that egg. It's definitely because of that egg. Back then in Muspelheim, this aura was terrifying, 10,000 fires bowing. No mistake. What? The moment those words were spoken, the crowd exploded. This is because of the egg. Are you serious? You're joking. An egg can cause World Tree visions. It can even set the sky on fire. That's too exaggerated. Questions, gasps, arguments echoed, yet everyone's gaze remained locked on the World Tree, hearts pounding. Beneath the World Tree, Odin and Frigga stared anxiously at the golden egg devouring energy at full speed. At the instant the energy converged to its peak. Kacha. A crisp, pleasant cracking sound entered their ears. Then, like a chain reaction, Kacha, Kacha, continued endlessly. Fine cracks appeared on the once unbreakable golden eggshell. The next second. Bang. The shell completely exploded. Thousands upon thousands of golden rays burst forth, dazzling to the extreme. The God King and the Queen unconsciously narrowed their eyes. At the center of the endless light, a figure slowly emerged. It was a human child, about 8 or 9 years old. Black hair. Black eyes. Yet everything about him radiated inhuman sanctity and majesty. He wore a golden robe woven from pure flame, within which it looked as if hundreds of millions of stars flickered. He wore a simple crown condensed from primordial fire, symbolizing the supreme authority of flame. He was young, yet in eyes as deep as a starry sky, there was not even half a child's innocence. Only cold indifference and lofty dignity, as if looking down upon all living beings. His temperament was noble and transcendent, as though he came from a higher dimension than this world. He didn't look like a prince. He looked like a born God King. Odin stared at him, stared at the sacred life he had personally brought back to Asgard. Seeing that otherworldly bearing and posture, the ecstasy in his heart reached its peak. Ha ha ha, good. 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 God King Odin let out a bold laugh that shook the entire Asgardian palace. He stepped forward, extended his hand, and proclaimed in a loud, majestic voice to all Asgard, indeed, to the 9 realms. From today onward, you are my 4th child. Asgard's 4th prince. Loki Odinson. The Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost. This magnificent bridge of colorful crystal was the key passage connecting Asgard to the other realms. Light flickered, and 2 young figures appeared at the bridgehead. The tall, handsome blonde youth with a strong build, holding a small yet powerful warhammer, was Asgard's great prince, Thor. Just behind him was another boy, equally handsome, yet with cunning and intelligence in his eyes. He was the 2nd prince, Loki. Heimdall, we're back. Thor laughed loudly. That trial in Vanaheim was truly fun. Those trolls are nothing, 1 hammer and they're smashed. Heimdall, guardian of the bridge's end, turned his golden eyes that could see through the 9 realms and nodded slightly. Welcome back, Prince Thor. Prince Loki. Hello, Heimdall. Loki rolled his eyes and asked with interest, while we were gone, did anything new happen in Asgard? Heimdall's serious face showed almost no emotion. He nodded, voice low and firm. Yes. And it may be an event that changes Asgard's future. Oh. Both Thor and Loki were interested. Heimdall gazed toward distant Asgard and said slowly, the Allfather conquered Muspelheim not long ago and brought back a mysterious egg from the Temple of Flame. An egg. Thor smiled with mild disdain. Father still likes collecting things like that. It is not an ordinary egg. Heimdall's tone grew heavier. Recently, that egg hatched beneath the world tree. A sacred life named Loki was born from it. And the Allfather publicly declared that he would accept him as his fourth child. Thor and Loki's smiles froze at the same time. Loki. Fourth child? Wait, you mean? Loki reacted fastest, eyes wide in shock. We have another brother. Heimdall nodded solemnly. Not only do you have a younger brother. He took a deep breath, as if still recalling that shocking scene. But this Prince Loki's power defies the heavens. He then briefly described the magnificent spectacle of Loki's birth, how it triggered world tree visions and turned all of Asgard's sky into a sea of flame. Thor and Loki were stunned. Is it real? Thor clenched the hammer in his hand, disbelief on his face. Triggering the world tree because of a newborn. A child. Loki's eyes shone with complex light. He didn't speak, but waves were already rising in his heart. This newly born younger brother, its meaning could not be ignored. Seeing Thor's unconvinced expression, Loki's mouth curled slightly. In a fan the flames tone, he said. Well, brother. Then your title of Asgard's #1 young warrior might be changing owners, No. Thor immediately flared up, neck stiff as he shouted, I'm the strongest in Asgard. How strong could someone be who just crawled out of an egg? He said that, but Heimdall's words had already stabbed into his heart. Dissatisfaction, competitiveness, and an unspoken sense of crisis rapidly sprouted. I'm going to meet this new guy. Thor swung his hammer. I'll let him know who Asgard's future really is. With that, he strode toward the palace with anger. Loki followed behind, his eyes gleaming as if he were about to watch a good show. Chapter 6, Thor defeated by a single finger. God of Thunder. You know nothing about power. When Thor arrived at Asgard's side corridor, he immediately saw the elegant and luxurious queen of the gods, Frigga, holding a child with black hair and black eyes in her arms, her expression full of affection. The child looked about 7 or 8 years old, yet he was astonishingly quiet, sitting calmly in the queen's embrace. His eyes were far too deep to belong to a child. There was no doubt. This was Loki. Mother. The moment Thor met Frigga's affectionate gaze, an even stronger discomfort rose in his heart. Oh, Thor, you're back. Frigga smiled gently at her eldest. Come, let me introduce you. This is Loki, your younger brother. Loki, this is your brother, Thor. Frigga set Loki down softly and touched both children's heads. From now on, you must get along, all right. Loki only glanced at Thor in silence, gave a slight nod, and said nothing. In his eyes, the blond boy crackling with thunder and lightning felt like a giant, energetic light bulb, simple in structure, and not threatening. Thor snorted and gave a perfunctory, humph. After Frigga left, Thor immediately revealed his ruler of Asgard nature. He strode up to Loki, brandished the small hammer in his hand as though it were imposing, and pointed at Loki with a tone he thought was majestic. Hey, newcomer. Heimdall said you're very strong, do you dare compete with me? I'll tell you this, I'm the strongest in Asgard. Even hearing Thor's childish, provocative declaration, Loki's expression didn't change in the slightest. He simply stood there quietly, his dark eyes calmly fixed on the blond boy before him. There was no emotion in that gaze, no contempt, no anger, no excitement for battle. It was more like a researcher observing an interesting yet simple biological specimen. To see essence, to understand the source. That was how Loki, newly awakened, looked at the world. In his vision, Thor's body was filled with explosive thunder and lightning power, wild and mighty, yet it surged in an extremely crude and chaotic way, driven by instinct and violent force. Like a child swinging a peerless divine weapon, it looked powerful, but was riddled with openings. Your understanding of power is far too superficial. Loki finally spoke. The indifference and depth in his voice did not match his age. That single line was like a spark falling into Thor's powder keg. What did you say? Thor was furious. The thing he was most proud of was his strength. Across all Asgard, none of his peers could surpass him. And now this guy, who had just crawled out of the egg, was saying his understanding of power was superficial. That was the greatest insult. You big-mouthed brat. I'll show you what it means to be taught a lesson. Thor roared in anger, no longer hesitating. He clenched his hammer with both hands, his forged warhammer, Mjolnir, blessed by Odin, and poured all his strength into it. Buzz. Lightning on the hammerhead flashed as wind and thunder erupted. Though it was still only a young version of a true warhammer, under Thor's divine power it carried tremendous momentum, smashing down toward Loki's head. Yet in the face of that thunderous strike, Loki's response exceeded Thor's imagination. He did not dodge. He did not evade. He raised his right hand and extended his index finger. Then, he pointed lightly at the whistling warhammer. One finger. Meeting Thor's hammer head-on. Seeing this, Thor's anger surged even higher. He felt the other party was humiliating him in public. He gritted his teeth and decided to use all his power, smash that hateful finger and its owner into the ground. The next instant, finger and hammerhead touched. There was no earth-shaking bang. No energy collision. No explosion. Thor felt as if he hadn't struck a finger at all. It felt like he had hit a neutron star. An incomparably vast, indestructible, yet utterly restrained force erupted from that finger. That force was too pure, too absolute. It carried no violent outward burst, yet in an instant it erased the wind, thunder, and lightning clinging to Thor's hammer, and annihilated every trace of divine power he had poured into it. Like a clay entering the sea, vanishing without a ripple. Immediately after, a terrifying recoil surged along the hammer's handle and flooded Thor's entire body. Bang! Thor's sturdy body flew backward like a ball kicked by a giant, faster than he had charged in, his whole body blasted away. He traced an embarrassing parabola through the air and finally slammed onto the hall floor on all fours with a dull thud, more than 10 meters away. The small warhammer slipped from his hand and clattered aside. The entire corridor fell into dead silence. Loki withdrew his finger. It was unscathed, without even the faintest tremor. He looked at Thor on the ground, his expression calm, as though he had just done something trivial. Thor lay on the cold floor, his mind blank. His body still numbed, he didn't even feel pain. Only endless confusion and shock. How could this be? He had attacked with everything he had. And the other party used one finger and blocked it. Not only that, Thor had been blasted away. He stared blankly at the ceiling, then at his slightly trembling hands, and finally at the black-haired child standing indifferent in the distance. For the first time in his life, his simple, muscle-bound brain was violently shaken at its core. Chapter 7, Observing the World Tree, Comprehending the Nine Realms Cyclic Breathing Method, Odin ecstatic, Loki has the bearing of a supreme god. Defeating Thor meant no more to Loki than a feather brushing past. He didn't care about this children's play at all. With an indifferent face, he turned and left. Through Odin and Frigga's words, and through his brief contact with Thor earlier, Loki had now basically confirmed where, and when, he was. This was a world where Marvel and other elements had fused together. Asgard was powerful, but Odin would grow old, and the shadow of Ragnarok would never truly disperse. In the abyss of the cosmos were Thanos collecting Infinity Stones, Galactus devouring worlds, and countless ancient gods and cosmic beings hidden in the dark. This place was not safe. He had to become stronger. Playing games with second-generation gods? A waste of time. Loki's goal was clear. The World Tree. That place was filled with energy and concrete laws, the best environment for his growth at this stage. Soon, he returned to the energy core region that pierced through the Nine Realms. He sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. His mind sank into emptiness, and his comprehension once again defied the heavens. This time, his purpose was no longer merely absorbing energy. What he needed to do was observe. His consciousness expanded without limit, as if merging with the entire world tree. He saw countless thick energy veins, representing the Nine Realms, slowly circulating through the world tree's vast system. Divine energy represented Asgard. Life energy represented Midgard, Earth. Frost energy represented Jotunheim. Fire energy represented Muspelheim. These completely different energies intertwined and collided, transforming one another within the world tree's grand system, yet they followed some supreme rhythm, forming a massive cycle of completion and harmony. They drew the energy of void from the roots, transported it through the branches into the Nine Realms, nourishing all living things. The activity, birth, and death of all beings created new energy, feeding back into the world tree. Life had no end, its cycle flowed back and forth. Contained within was the fundamental operation of the entire Nine Realms cosmos. Lucci immersed his consciousness in that great circulation, as if listening to the breathing of the universe. You observe the energy circulation of the 9 realms through the world tree. Your comprehension defies the heavens and begins analyzing its principles. You understand the transformation of birth and extinction. You understand the balance of absorption and feedback. You understand the energy homology of the 9 realms. You combine your origin true fire marvelous art to create a new cultivation method. If the origin true fire marvelous art was an inward method, awakening his potential from within, then what Lucci wanted to create now was an outward method, communing with heaven and the universe, seizing external energy for himself. Inner and outer together, this was the main path. Core established, resonate with the universe at the same frequency as the 9 realms. Method established, inhale, triggering an energy tide. Naming the method. This method triggers the 9 realms cycle with each breath. It can be called the 9 realms cyclic breathing method. Boom. The instant this new technique fully formed and began operating, the entire world tree roared in response. Last time, the world tree had been passively swallowed by Lucci's absorption. This time, it was actively resonating. It was as if every breath Lucci took called forth the same frequency as the 9 realms, and even the vast universe beyond. With each inhale, the energies of the 9 realms moved toward him and converged, even cosmic tides from beyond space and time were drawn into him. Invisible cosmic energy condensed into a tangible tide. Centered on Lucci, waves washed over his divine body and soul again and again. At the same time, in Asgard's temple, Odin was handling post-war affairs. He had just signed an order to repair the Rainbow Bridge's energy loss and was about to pick up the next scroll, when he abruptly stopped. He looked up sharply. In his single eye, an eagle-like light flashed as he stared toward the world tree. A rhythm of energy, supreme, pure, faintly carrying the resonance of origin, appeared without warning. It was vast, ancient, profound, like the heartbeat at the beginning of the universe's birth. Even more shocking, that rhythm actually tugged Odin's divine power and forced it to resonate. Before it, Odin's power felt like a river meeting the sea, drawn in, yearning to approach, almost wanting to worship. What is happening? Odin rose from the throne instantly, suspicion on his face. What happened to the world tree? Or, a frightening thought struck him. Could it be Lucci again? Unable to sit still with mountains of government affairs, Odin vanished from the throne. The next moment, he crossed distant space and appeared near the world tree. When he saw the scene, even though he had already guessed it, he still gasped in shock. Lucci was floating cross-legged in midair. Eyes closed, expression tranquil, breathing long and deep in a mysterious rhythm. Each breath drew in the world tree's energy, and even cosmic tides from the void beyond the 9 realms, forming visible bands of radiant energy that wrapped around him and flowed into his body. The supreme rhythm that stirred Odin's divine power was emanating from Lucci. Incredible, it really is him. Odin's single eye filled with unparalleled awe. He could clearly feel that Lucci was no longer simply absorbing energy. He was resonating. Every inhale resonated with the world tree's 9 realms circulation law. Every exhale triggered deeper waves of cosmic power. What did this mean? It meant Lucci's talent and understanding were terrifying. His affinity and comprehension of law had reached an unbelievable level. Had he observed the world tree and comprehended a supreme cultivation method for the 9 realms on his own? In that moment, only 2 words remained in Odin's mind. Monster. Genius. No. Calling Lucci a monster or genius felt too thin, almost blasphemous. After a brief, extreme shock, Odin was drowned again by an even greater ecstasy. Ha ha, ha ha. He couldn't hold it in and laughed wildly in his heart. To observe the world tree and actually comprehend the 9 realms cultivation method. This isn't a genius, this isn't a demon. Odin stared at Lucci, his eyes shining, muttering in a near dreamlike voice. Indeed, born with sacred destiny. Lucci, you have the bearing of a supreme god. In his long life he had seen countless so-called geniuses. Some could learn a spell quickly. Some could lift 1,000 pounds with ease. But those only learned and applied rules the world already had. What was Lucci doing? He was creating. He was giving birth to definitions. From creating the origin true fire marvelous art to the present 9 realms cyclic breathing method. Every step was carving a path no one had walked before. Each realization paid its price, and even surpassed this world's original system of laws. Odin was so excited he could barely contain himself. He had once thought Luci's future would be Asgard's glory. Now he felt he had underestimated it. Luci's future might be the glory of the entire universe. And that future supreme existence was now an Asgardian prince. Could anything be more thrilling? Odin forced down the urge to approach. He knew this was a crucial moment in Luci's cultivation and must not be disturbed. The majestic god king silently stepped back, his figure fading into space. Before leaving, he issued an absolute royal decree that rang directly in every guard's mind throughout the palace. Spread my oracle. Prince Luci is undergoing deep cultivation beneath the world tree. No one is to disturb him. Chapter 8, Reading 10,000 Years of Archives in One Night. A sea of knowledge? Merely my stored rations. When Luci awakened from cultivating the 9 realms cyclic breathing method, he felt it clearly. His soul and divine body had undergone a rebirth-like transformation. His height had grown noticeably, he now looked around 10 or 11. His connection to the 9 realms' energies had become extremely close, as if the realms were his own backyard. As long as he wished, he could draw upon their power at any time. The origin true fire within his divine body had condensed further, every movement could stir the power of origin. Not enough. Luci calmly examined himself. His progress was fast, but still insufficient before true great powers, those who could reboot the universe and toy with timelines at will. Strength took time. But knowledge could be accumulated faster. Only by knowing oneself and one's enemy could one be undefeated. He needed a comprehensive, systematic understanding of this complex world. Luci vanished from beneath the world tree and arrived directly at Odin's temple. Odin froze for a moment when he saw him, then smiled broadly. Luci, your cultivation is finished. How do you feel? It's fine. Luci answered simply and stated his purpose. I need to read Asgard's classics. Reading classics. Odin's smile widened. Look at that. How interesting. How self-motivated. Compared to Thor, who only fought and flexed muscle all day. This was the difference of heaven and earth. Good. Of course. Odin agreed without hesitation. With a grand wave of his hand, he said heroically. All the knowledge Asgard has collected for tens of thousands of years is open to you. Come. I'll take you there personally. Odin personally led Luci to a magnificent library. This was the God King's library, the temple of Asgardian knowledge, housing countless documents and scrolls spanning tens of thousands of years since the era of Odin's father. History. War. Magic. Divine power. Alchemy. Runes. 9 realms customs. Cosmic anomalies. It was vast as an ocean of smoke, encompassing everything. Here it is. Odin pointed proudly at the library doors. Luci, knowledge is a treasure more precious than strength. All of Asgard's 10,000-year accumulation is here. Take your time. Read as much as you like. In his heart, Odin thought, with Luci's talent, it might take hundreds of years to master everything here. Understood. Luci nodded and walked into the library as calmly as if entering an ocean of knowledge. The librarian, an erudite old god with white hair, glanced at Luci, nodded to Odin, then closed his eyes again. Odin did not take it seriously and left in satisfaction. Inside the library, Luci stood between shelves that extended beyond sight, but what they held were not ordinary books. They were divine crystals that contained information. A sea of knowledge? Merely his stored rations. Luci stood quietly at the library center and slowly closed his eyes. The next moment, his heaven-defying comprehension erupted in a new way, fully unleashed. Buzz. Invisible supreme divine thought poured from the center of his brow. That divine thought became hundreds of millions of unseen tentacles, instantly spreading to every corner of the God King's library. Each tentacle linked to a divine crystal packed with massive information. What Luci was doing now was one thought, origin analysis. You scan the chronicles of Asgard. You comprehend 10,000 years of 9 realms history. You scan detailed explanation of the God King's armory. You understand the mechanisms of all artifacts. You scan general theory of basic magic. Your comprehension defies the heavens and derives deeper magical models. You scan strange tales, the mad titan. You learn of Thanos. You scan forbidden knowledge, the Celestials' archive. You learn of cosmic creators. You scan ancient legends, the destruction of Krypton. You learn of Superman. You scan speculations on mutant origins. You learn of the X gene. Only one night. Just one night, and it was done. From the royal secrets of Asgard to the customs of the Nine Worlds. From foundational magical theory to the universe's forbidden knowledge. From Thanos and the Celestials to Kryptonians and mutants. All recorded knowledge, no matter how profound or complex, was read, absorbed, understood, and integrated by Lucci. Not only did he know it. He analyzed its essence through his own comprehension. When the first morning light entered the library, Lucci opened his eyes. At this moment, his understanding of this world surpassed most Asgardian gods who had lived for thousands of years, and in breadth of knowledge he was not inferior even to Odin. So that's how it is. He murmured to himself. More complicated than I imagined. An interesting worldview. He turned calmly and walked out of the library. The librarian guarding the door froze when he saw Lucci and hurried forward. Prince Lucci, why are you leaving so early? Did you not find any books you liked? Lucci glanced at him and said lightly, no. I've finished reading. Then he left at once, leaving the librarian standing alone in the wind. Finished reading. In one night. After reading the entire God King's library. What? What kind of joke was this? The librarian rubbed his eyes, pinched his own arm to make sure he wasn't dreaming, then gasped and sprinted toward the God King's hall. When Odin heard the news, his first reaction was disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. Odin shot to his feet, shocked. He read all the classics in one night. Even I took 3,000 years. Frigga felt dizzy as well. This child's performance had shattered their common sense again and again. Let's go. We must verify it ourselves. Odin could no longer sit still. Together with Frigga, he hurried toward Lucci's palace. He had to see with his own eyes whether this child's talent truly defied the heavens to such an extent. Chapter 9, The General Outline of Rune Sigils. The mentor collapses. I can't teach His Highness, he can teach me. Lucci's palace was located in the quietest place at the heart of the immortal palace city. When he returned, several beautiful fairy attendants welcomed him. He let them serve busily while the flood of knowledge still surged in his mind, as countless pieces of information were categorized and integrated. In the end, his interest settled on an ancient field of knowledge. Runes. Runes were the core of Asgard's rune arts. Each rune contained its own power. Asgard's texts recorded dozens of basic to advanced runes. Their different combinations could be used for enchantment, protection, attack, divination, and more. An interesting way to use energy. Lucci entered his study, extended a finger, and tapped lightly. A rune representing Guardian appeared in the air, glowing faintly. This was one of Asgard's most basic runes. Lucci's eyes fixed on it, and within the depths of his gaze, the rune instantly decomposed into countless foundational energy lines and law nodes. Heaven-defying comprehension, once again revealing its divine might. You observe the rune Guardian. You begin analyzing its energy construction logic. You understand the basic principles of damage deflection and barrier construction. Your comprehension defies the heavens. You discover redundancy in this rune's structure and collisions among energy nodes. You begin reverse inference. Lucci did not learn the known runes from the classics one by one. That would be too slow and inefficient. Instead, he chose to start from the simplest rune and cut backward directly, analyzing the lowest and most fundamental structural logic and creation principles of rune arts. It was like others still learning 1 + 1 is equal to 2 while he had already started deducing calculus. You see through the underlying logic of runes. You begin forward inference. In Lucci's mind, it was as if an infinite drafting board appeared. He treated the lowest construction logic as axioms and began to infer, combine, and derive endlessly. One by one. New runes that were not recorded in the classics were born in his mind. A rune for absolute sharpness. A rune for spatial folding. A rune for time slowing. A rune for life stripping. And a rune for erasure. Known runes, unknown runes, lost runes, even variations that existed only in theory. In this moment, all were included within his calculations, optimized, and completed. He did not stop there. After deriving thousands of new runes, he began to integrate, summarize, and unify them. What he wanted was not merely a few new runes. What he wanted was an all-encompassing work, directly reaching the source, the Bible of this discipline, a general outline. You integrate all rune variations. You create a new rune codex. Rune outline successfully created. The instant this outline fully formed in Lucci's mind, his aura changed. If he had once been a deep starry sky, then at this moment, he carried a trace of something that defined all things and followed the law. The birth of this outline meant that Lucci had become the supreme existence in the field of runes. A god. At the same time, fluctuations of divine power appeared outside the study. Odin and Frigga arrived. They did not barge in. They stood at the door, watching from afar. And they felt it. An extremely rich and pure rune power on Lucci. That ancient, profound power shocked them. My gods. Frigga covered her mouth. He, really, spent one night reading, and has already grasped rune power. No, Odin's single eye flickered. This is no longer grasping. I can feel the rune imprint on his body changing. He is creating new runes. Frigga, a master of Asgardian magic and runes herself, instantly understood the terrifying meaning. Creating new runes. How was that possible? Every rune was an embodiment of laws. Understanding and verifying one could take hundreds, sometimes thousands, of years. How could a child do such a thing? Is he experimenting randomly and causing energy disorder? Frigga's face filled with worry. Rune power was extremely dangerous, a slight misstep could trigger backlash from the laws. Odin fell silent for a moment, unable to avoid concern. Don't worry. I'll find him the best teacher to guide him. They did not disturb Lucci, retreating quietly in shock and excitement. They decided to find the most learned rune master in Asgard. The next day, Odin invited the famous rune grandmaster Alfred. Alfred was an ancient god who had lived for around 8,000 years, devoting his entire life to rune studies. Across all Asgard, none surpassed him in knowledge and understanding of runes. Your Majesty, you summoned me from seclusion with such solemnity, may I ask which prince I am to teach? Alfred followed Odin, his grey beard swaying slightly, his face carrying the restraint of a top scholar. The new prince, Lucci. As they walked, Odin vaccinated him in advance. Alfred, just in case, let me say this first. Lucci's talent. How do I put it? It feels somewhat heaven-defying. You should prepare yourself. Heaven-defying. Alfred chuckled, stroking his beard, a trace of displeasure in his expression. Your Majesty, forgive my bluntness. I have taught countless geniuses. Talent matters, yes, but accumulation of rune knowledge and understanding requires time. He said confidently, no matter how gifted, he's still a child. With my 8,000 years of knowledge, could I fail to teach a child? Please rest assured. Odin thought, perhaps he had overreacted, frightened by Lucci's repeated feats. In this field, Alfred was the authority, having him guide Lucci should be correct. With that thought, Odin relaxed somewhat. Soon they arrived at Lucci's palace. Lucci, I've invited a master for you, Odin introduced gently. This is Grandmaster Alfred, the most learned rune instructor in Asgard. In the future, he will teach you rune knowledge. Lucci looked calmly at the white-bearded elder and gave a slight nod in greeting. Alfred looked at Lucci like an elder assessing the young. He intended to display the breadth and depth of rune arts, so this genius prince would understand that learning had no end and must not become complacent. Your Highness Lucci, Alfred cleared his throat. Runes are a bridge communicating with the world. Their profundity is worth a lifetime of exploration. Today, I will first show you a composite guardian rune that I have researched for over 300 years. As he spoke, he extended a finger. Divine power flowed as he began drawing in the air. His movements were skillful and intricate, lines of light intertwining in silver brilliance, forming a finely structured rune. This rune combines guardian, evasion, and stability. It can withstand the full force attack of an elite warrior. Alfred's face was full of pride. Even Odin nodded secretly, this rune had reached an exquisite level. But Lucci only glanced at it calmly. One look was enough. Then he raised a finger and casually drew beside Alfred's silver rune. He had none of Alfred's complex techniques, his motions were simple, direct, and clean. Yet every stroke seemed to carry a wondrous rhythm. In a few seconds, a completely new rune took shape. Its structure was far more concise than Alfred's, only a few strokes, plain in appearance. But the moment it formed, buzz. The palace's energy surged toward it. Its light was not dazzling, but the artistic concept of the law of absolute protection was so dense that even God King Odin felt his heart pound more intuitively. Its energy intensity was more than 10 times Alfred's proud work. Even Alfred's complex rune began to dim and tremble under the pressure of the new rune's aura, as though a fake ashamed before the real. This. Impossible. Alfred's pride froze in an instant, replaced by ultimate shock and numbness. He stared at the rune Lucci had drawn casually, as if seeing something terrifying that overturned his worldview. A simple structure meant high energy efficiency. A strong attraction of energy meant deep understanding of law. He had studied his proud work for hundreds of years. Yet before what this child drew so casually, he was utterly defenseless. Alfred's mind went blank. 8,000 years of knowledge and pride felt as if they had shattered into dust. In despair, his gaze caught a parchment scroll on a nearby table. On it, in flowing script, were several large words. Rune outline. Below were sketches of runes he had never seen, strange structures unlike anything known. As if bewitched, Alfred trembled and reached out, picking it up. He only needed one glance. A quick look at the opening outline and the first analysis of a new rune. The 8,000-year-old rune master's legs went weak, and he collapsed to the ground. Cold sweat soaked his forehead, his face turned pale as paper, as if he had witnessed a miracle. This contains all new runes. He raised his head trembling and looked at Odin, his eyes as if staring at a monster, his voice even carrying sobs. God King, forgive my incompetence. I cannot teach Prince Lucci. He is my teacher, almost. Chapter 10, Loki's Scheme. Seen through with one eye, a turn of the hand, a heart demon labyrinth. At Alfred's near collapse and wailing, Odin's expression turned strange. He stared at the rune grandmaster on the ground, then at the parchment draft that had completely broken him, and a bitter smile tugged at his eyes. He bent down and took the draft, rune outline, from Alfred's trembling hands. At a single glance, Odin felt extraordinary charm of law. Every word, every stroke on the parchment seemed to echo the universe's origin, resonating with the majesty of following the law. His gaze fell on the opening outline. Runes are the whispers of the universe, the marks of law. Their form is the surface, their meaning is the inner layer, their rhyme is the foundation. The people of the world often see the form, rarely understand the meaning, and almost never notice the root. Now, we return to the foundation and reshape it. Just a few lines, starting from clarity and going straight to the core. Odin's heart shook. What a brilliant perspective. What terrifying insight. He read further, seeing Lucci's optimized basic runes and unheard of new ones. For example, a rune called Singularity, able to infinitely compress space within a designated range. And another rune called Entropy Silence, able to forcibly halt all energy activity within the target area. With Odin's vision as a all-father-class powerhouse, he instantly understood the greatness of this general outline. This was no longer using a source. This was defining a new origin. Many of Lucci's runes were backed by deep laws and applied techniques that even Odin would need significant time to comprehend and master. If the runes Odin had once understood were knowledge the world tree had taught, then what Lucci was doing now was giving the world tree a lesson. Telling the world tree what runes should be. Gulp. God King Odin swallowed unconsciously. He raised his head, looking at Lucci's calm face, as though he had done something trivial. And the shock in his heart was unbearable. At last, Odin realized that all his previous prophecies and judgments had been wrong. And wrong by an absurd margin. He had thought Lucci was learning the world's knowledge. Now he realized Lucci had never been studying. He was compensating. He was transcending. Lucci's growth speed completely surpassed Odin's imagination and comprehension. Perhaps. A frightening thought made Odin's heart pound. Asgard's future is greater than I imagined. And it will arrive, far sooner. Just as Odin was shaken by Lucci's heaven-defying display. Elsewhere in Asgard, in the training grounds, Thor was alone, hugging boulders and venting his frustration. The scene of his defeat by Lucci that day lingered like a nightmare. He couldn't understand why the power he was proud of had been crushed so completely. Loki saw Thor and curled his lips into a playful smile. What's wrong? My brave, invincible brother, the future guardian of Asgard, what troubles you? Don't bother me, Loki. Thor roared. Oh. Loki circled him. Is it because of your new brother? Thor's movement stopped. He slammed the rock in his hands onto the ground with a loud crash. He didn't speak, but his expression said everything. Seeing the reaction, Loki became more certain. Still pretending surprise, he asked, right? You really went to compete with him and then lost? Thor's face flushed. Hesitating, he told Loki how he had been defeated by Loki's single finger. Loki's teasing slowly faded, replaced by disbelief. He's really that strong? He used only one finger. I don't know if he's strong, but... Thor struggled for words. His power was huge, incomprehensible. Loki stared at Thor blankly, then rolled his eyes and employed his best provocation. What? You can't handle such a tiny setback. He sneered. How shameless to call yourself Asgard's first warrior. It seems that title might belong to someone else. That's not true. Thor was instantly triggered and jumped up. I was just momentarily confused. I'll get stronger. I'll go challenge him again, right now. With that, he turned and stormed toward the palace as if proving his strength. Loki watched Thor's ignorant back and twisted his lips in contempt. As expected, brainless. Muscles growing into his head. He looked toward Loki's palace, malice in his eyes. Strength alone is meaningless. In Asgard, you must use your head. And that boy named Loki. It seems he needs a little color. Otherwise he'll really think no one is left in Asgard. A scheme silently took shape in Loki's mind. As one of Asgard's top illusion masters, Loki had absolute confidence in his illusion craft. Strong. Before a refined illusion, it was nothing but fists swinging at empty air. Loki. Let me see whether your mind is as simple as Thor's. Loki stood before a huge magic mirror, a crafty smile on his lips. He stretched out his hand. Divine power flowed, and ancient incantations spilled from his mouth. Soon, an illusory clone emerged from the mirror, identical to Loki, even mimicking his breathing vividly. Go, Loki ordered. To Loki's palace. Give our new brother a greeting. Make him understand how deep Asgard's waters are. His goal was simple: use illusion to deceive Loki, make him embarrass himself in front of everyone, and blunt his edge. The clone smiled strangely at Loki, then drifted away, passing through walls and floating toward Loki's palace. Inside the palace, Loki was immersed in further refining the rune outline. Suddenly, he raised his head, his calm gaze landing on the palace gate. Loki strode in boldly. But to Loki's eyes, this Loki felt wrong. In his vision, everything had essence. This Loki's body was wrapped in dazzling illusion energy, yet at its core was emptiness, unreality. Like a realistic painting, in the end, it was still flat. Heaven-defying comprehension, automatic activation. You observe an unknown illusion creation. You begin analyzing the composition of illusion energy. Your comprehension defies the heavens. You instantly understand the essence of illusion and create your own magic, eyes that shatter delusion. In an instant, within the depths of Loki's pupils, countless runes seemed to live and die. The world before him changed again. The illusion energy disguising Loki vanished in his sight, revealing a false core made purely of magic. A doppelganger. You want to play? Loki understood immediately, yet his face remained calm. He even found it a little amusing. Using illusions. It was like a 3-year-old showing off single-digit addition and subtraction in front of a mathematics professor. But since the other party delivered himself to the door, Loki was willing to return the favor. You gain insight into the origin of illusion, your comprehension defies the heavens. You begin creating a new application of illusion. Combining the opponent's thought patterns and soul fluctuations, you create your own magic, heart demon labyrinth. A faint arc curved at the corner of Loki's mouth. He lifted his eyes to the approaching clone, who was about to mock him. Loki's gaze met the clone's. Broken. He spat out a single word softly. An invisible power of shattered delusion struck instantly. Before the clone could speak, it popped like a bursting bubble, poof, turning into green specks of light and dissipating into the air. But it didn't end there. The moment the clone shattered, Loki's powerful, incomparable divine thought surged along the faint spiritual link between the clone and the original. Like lightning flowing against the current, crossing distant space, blasting straight into Loki's mind in another palace. Returning the gift. Receive it. Boom. In Loki's palace. He reclined leisurely, wine glass in hand, imagining Lucci's embarrassed face in his illusion, smiling smugly. Suddenly, it felt as if an invisible giant hammer smashed his brain. His vision went black, all scenes vanished in an instant. When he opened his eyes, again, he found himself in an endless, mirror-lined maze. This is where? Loki was shocked. He immediately realized he had been tricked. It was an illusion. Humph, trying to teach a master. Loki sneered. He was confident in his own ability to break illusions. But when he tried to dispel it, he was stunned. All his illusion techniques were completely ineffective here. This labyrinth seemed built directly on his mental origin, unimaginably real and solid. At that moment, in the maze's mirrors, his most terrifying visions began to appear one after another. Scenes of being seized by giants and about to be eaten. Odin looking at him with cold eyes and disappointment. Thor ascending the throne while Loki could only envy from the shadows. And the thing he feared most. The endless, lonely abyss of the cosmos. No. No. I don't care about any of that. It's all fake. Loki ran madly through the maze, trying to escape. But no matter how he ran, he could not leave the circular labyrinth. The terrifying scenes repeated before him again and again like pus on bone. Ah. Help. In reality, inside Loki's palace, the god of mischief was sprawled on the floor, convulsing, face pale, eyes shut tight, screaming with bottomless grief and endless terror. He had been completely crushed in his own specialty. Chapter 11, on illusion arts, even Frigga feels inferior. Loki gets played into ruin. Loki's scream instantly startled the maids of the palace. When they rushed in, a bizarre scene greeted them. Asgard's noble second prince lay on the cold floor, his body convulsing violently. Cold sweat soaked his clothes, and terror twisted his face, as if he were trapped inside the most horrifying nightmare in the world. Hurry! Report to the gods. The maids trembled. One of them immediately ran to Frigga to deliver the news. Before long, the elegant and luxurious Queen Frigga arrived in haste. The moment she saw Loki's condition, her beautiful brows knit together. All of you, leave. Frigga waved the maids away. She walked to Loki, knelt, and extended slender fingers, gently tapping his forehead. A soft yet mighty divine power followed her fingertips and slipped into Loki's spiritual realm. She wanted to see what could possibly torment her son, someone highly skilled in illusion, to this extent. But the instant her divine power entered Loki's mind, Frigga's expression changed abruptly. She saw it. An unimaginably delicate, complex illusory labyrinth. This wasn't mere visual deception, nor a simple distortion of memory. Its structure directly acted upon the target's spiritual origin, using the deepest fears and desires within the heart as bricks and tiles to build a real, ideal world. The ingenuity of the concept, the finesse of the technique, the profound understanding of spiritual laws. Even Frigga, recognized in Asgard as the first and greatest master of illusion, felt her heart shake with shock. Even the slightest hint of it made her want to admit inferiority. If one spoke only of the quality of illusion, this labyrinth had surpassed her. Frigga's face grew grim. If her divine power were not high enough to forcibly break the walls with absolute power, she feared that even she might struggle to solve such a masterpiece of an illusory maze. Break! Frigga increased her divine output. With a sharp reprimand, the illusory maze tormenting Loki finally shattered under overwhelming external force. Ah, call someone. Loki suddenly jolted upright, panting hard. His eyes still carried an indelible, extreme fear. Mother. He looked at Frigga like she was his savior, his voice thick with tears. Loki. What happened? Frigga's face was solemn. Who did this to you? In Asgard, when had such a brilliant illusionist appeared? Loki avoided her gaze, hesitating, clearly unwilling to tell the truth. How could he tell his mother that he had tried to prank someone, only to get ruined by the other party's illusion instead? Humiliating. Tell me the truth. Frigga's eyes narrowed slightly, the majesty of the queen of the gods rising. Under her pressure, Loki's emotions exploded. He lowered his head in frustration and confessed everything, how he had created an illusory clone to cause trouble for Lucci, only to be countered and trapped by the other party's move. When Frigga finished listening, she froze. Shock flooded her beautiful eyes. Unbelievable. It was Lucci. Not only did he possess mastery of runes, he was even defying the heavens in other domains. A rune grandmaster could fall to him, and now, in the field of illusion, he was displaying a terrifying talent that surpassed even her. Could this still be explained by talent? Seeing his mother's shocked expression, Loki thought he'd found a chance to complain. He immediately burst out. "Mother! You saw it, didn't you? That Lucci went too far. He tortured me with such a cruel illusion." Silence. Frigga snapped back to herself and glared at him. "If you hadn't acted with malice to tease Lucci, how would you have been tricked? This is your own fault." Then she issued a direct order. "You are confined for 3 days. Stay in the palace and reflect." Loki was completely dumbfounded. He'd been abused like that, and he still had to be grounded. Was there any justice in this? Frigga ignored his grievance. She went straight to Odin and told her husband what Loki had done, along with her judgment of that illusory labyrinth. After hearing her, Odin fell silent for a long time. In his one remaining eye, the color of shock grew extremely intense. Strength, knowledge, runes. And now illusion as well. This child's talent was like a bottomless pit. Every time he thought he'd seen its depth, it immediately showed him an even deeper and wider world. Ha, ha 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 ha. Odin suddenly laughed. The laughter was filled with complicated emotions, shock and satisfaction, and even more than that, an unprecedented anticipation. He raised his head and said with shining excitement. "Frigga. I've decided. I want to teach Lucci personally. I want Odin's power to be inherited by him. I want to see where his limit truly lies." Chapter 12, Observing Odin's Divine Power. Not yet perfect, it can still be optimized. Asgard, the Grand Arena. This magnificent circular structure was a symbol of glory and power within the divine realm. Its walls were forged from undying Uru god stone, towering into the sky. The ground was paved with obsidian slabs that could absorb energy impacts, carved with countless scars left by god kings and warriors of past dynasties. Lucci. Odin's deep, majestic voice echoed through the empty arena, carrying a faint expectation and solemnity. "You have shown talent far beyond my expectations in knowledge, runes, illusion, and many other fields. Today, I will show you the foundation of Asgard's inheritance, and also the foundation of my existence as God King. Odin's power. This power has accompanied me for nearly 10,000 years. It is wisdom taken from the world tree, and from my own blood and soul, tempered through countless life and death battles. It is the guardian of order across the 9 realms, the end of all chaos and evil." His tone brimmed with supreme pride in his strength. Lucci listened quietly. Only now did real interest appear in his deep eyes. Since coming to this world, whether it was Surtur's twilight flames, Thor's thunder, or Loki's illusions, none of it seemed more than surface-level energy application to him. But Odin, a being of the All-Father tier, claiming this as the foundation of the God King. Maybe it would let him see something different. "I'm looking forward to it, Father," Lucci replied calmly. Odin stared at Lucci's composed gaze and nodded inwardly. Not arrogant. Not impatient. A mind as still as water. With that temperament alone, he already surpassed Thor and Loki by far. Odin took a deep breath, saying no more. "Watch." Boom. A force beyond words exploded from Odin's body. In an instant, the entire arena seemed to roar. The clouds overhead froze, the air felt like it had solidified. Behind Odin rose an enormous, ancient, supreme golden divine power, like a newborn sun. The golden light wasn't blinding, yet it contained a peerless majesty that shook the soul. Wherever the light reached, space warped slightly, and even laws seemed to retreat before it. Even the ancient battlefield reliefs carved into the arena walls looked as if they had come alive under the reflection of Odin's divine power. Warriors in the carvings screamed silently, fallen enemies wailed in terror. This was Odin's power. With a mere breath, it could trigger visions of heaven and earth. Yet before such overwhelming might, enough to make gods kneel and even cosmic demon gods tremble, Lucci's expression did not change at all. His eyes remained calm, detached. But deep within that serenity, and unnoticed, earth-shaking analysis began. Heaven-defying comprehension, fully unleashed. In Lucci's vision, the world's colors and shapes vanished in an instant. Odin was no longer a majestic god king, the arena was no longer a grand building. Everything became lines and nodes, only the most essential structures remained. And in this moment, in Lucci's eyes, the golden torrent known as Odin's power revealed itself as an unprecedented, extremely complex aggregate. Not merely an energy eruption anymore. It was precise, massive, and made of 4 entirely different yet perfectly integrated powers, a composite divine structure. You are observing Odin's divine power. Your comprehension defies the heavens and begins analyzing the origin. Analysis begins. Structural separation. Lucci's consciousness became an invisible scalpel, cutting precisely into the interior and analyzing its components layer by layer. First layer, the bearing of the king, woven from countless golden threads of law. Insight gained, one core, God-King authority. These threads weren't naturally formed. They were edicts carved by Odin's own will. They represented rule, decree, judgment, and protection. This layer, God-King authority, gave Odin's power its highest characteristic, to speak and define order. It was the true identity of the God-King, the embodiment of the 9 realms' supreme authority. Second layer, all-knowing, and endless and multicolored. Insight gained, core composition, power of the 9 realms. Lucci saw 9 different torrents of energy continuously extracted from the void and fused into Odin's system, raging fire of Muspelheim, extreme ice of Jotunheim, life energy of Vanaheim. These 9 powers were forcibly suppressed and harmonized by the God-King authority layer, becoming Odin's greatest energy source. Third layer, a rune matrix, serving as the skeleton of the entire structure. Insight gained, core composition, rune power. Countless ancient, esoteric, radiant runes, like stars, formed the core framework. Each rune represented a function, linked into an extremely advanced, operating system. This was what allowed Odin to mobilize and utilize the vast powers of the 9 realms freely, unleashing all manner of wondrous divine arts. Fourth layer, the deepest core. Insight gained, core composition, Odin's soul. A soul flame that had burned for tens of thousands of years, condensed to the extreme. It was both the central processor of the entire system and the ultimate energy source. From it, Lucci could see Odin's life, countless battles, descents of wisdom, emotional imprints, and an unextinguishable kingly will. God-King authority as the crown. 9 realms power as the body. Rune power as the bones. The king's soul as the core. Together they formed the supreme force feared across the 9 realms. But Lucci's analysis didn't stop there. He followed the energy flow deeper, more meticulously, until he discovered flaws. Deep scan. Rune matrix, microcracks found due to energy overload. 9 realms energy river, energy accumulation formed from law collisions. Odin's soul flame, faint gloom and deficiency at the origin under constant high-intensity burning. These flaws were like the faintest overline on exquisite porcelain, like the most hidden ant nest within a magnificent dam. They were hidden wounds inevitably left by Odin's 10,000-year campaigns. Individually, they were negligible. But over time, they would limit Odin's further growth and become a hidden danger that eroded his origin. To the beings of the 9 realms, Odin's power remained mysterious. But before Lucci, it was no longer secret, its composition, operation, strengths, and weaknesses. Understood. Lucci's heart remained anciently calm. This structure is magnificent and brilliantly designed. But it isn't perfect. Yes, it can be optimized. Chapter 13, Self-Creating the Secret Codex of Divine Power Refinement, Raising Asgard's Maximum Divine Power Limit. In the grand arena, Odin still maintained the posture of releasing Odin's power. Vast golden divinity wrapped around him like an eternal ancient god. In his one eye was the calm pride of a father. He believed anyone experiencing this power for the first time would be overwhelmed by its grandeur. He wanted to enjoy Lucci's shock, awe, yearning. But he was disappointed. Lucci's expression never changed. Those star-deep black eyes simply watched, quietly, watching Odin, watching the divine power Odin was proud of. The gaze was too calm. Odin had never seen such an expression in anyone's eyes. It wasn't a disciple worshipping a grandmaster, nor people worshipping a king. Rather, it was like a top artisan observing a complex artwork. Like a profound scholar interpreting an ancient secret text. There was no worship, no fear, only pure research, exploration, insight. At first, Odin thought it was merely Lucci's extraordinary temperament. But soon, an indescribable unease rose from the depths of his soul. A feeling of being seen through. Odin's heart jolted. He sensed that Odin's divine power, tightly linked to his soul, always in motion, had produced an extremely faint yet abnormal resonance at this moment. Not due to external energy interference, nor his own active mobilization. It was an echo. As if a higher, invisible will was scanning and verifying his divine power, causing it to passively respond. Odin's heart tightened. What was happening? He unconsciously condensed his one-eyed divine light to the limit, searching for the source of the anomaly. And then he saw it. In the depths of Lucci's calm eyes, countless runes flickered, some known, many unknown, and billions of stars were born and extinguished. The source of that supreme will making him feel monitored was Lucci. He was the one watching me. He was the one analyzing my power. A thought so absurd it felt ridiculous even to Odin exploded in his mind like thunder. No, impossible. Odin rejected it immediately. Odin's power was unique, formed from world tree revelation, Asgardian bloodline, a soul will tempered over tens of thousands of years, and the mysteries of countless runes. The complexity of laws and precision of its energy structure were far beyond what learning or observing could reach. Even other All-Father-level powerhouses could only feel its strength. It was absolutely impossible to understand its internal structure in a short time. It was like an ultimate mathematical formula composed of countless variables belonging solely to Odin. Others might see the magnificence of the final answer, but they couldn't reverse derive the complete formula at a glance. Unless the other party's level was already high enough to skip all process and directly comprehend essence. Odin's heartbeat accelerated uncontrollably. He needed to confirm. He forcibly suppressed his doubts. Outwardly calm, but secretly, from the massive divine system, he separated a thread-thin trace of golden power. He carefully probed it toward Lucci. A subtle temptation. The energy contained was so small it couldn't blow away a speck of dust, yet it completely carried the core information of Odin's power, authority, 9 realms, runes, and soul. Like a full code sample. When that trace approached Lucci's eyes moved with it. The sensation of being stared at and resonating became instantly clearer. Boom. It was as if 10,000 volcanoes erupted simultaneously in Odin's mind. The calm pride on his face collapsed. Only unbearable fear and disbelief remained. It was real. He had truly seen through Odin's divine power. How was that possible? In this moment, the God King who had endured hundreds of battles, witnessed the birth and destruction of worlds, and ruled the 9 realms by wisdom and strength for nearly 10,000 years. For the first time tasted the feeling called smallness. He no longer felt like the supreme sovereign of the 9 realms. He felt like a mortal standing upright before an omniscient God. His pride, his trump cards, his secrets. Before Lucci's calm, indifferent gaze, they all looked pale and ridiculous. He had guarded the foundation of the 9 realms with proud power for 10,000 years. Yet before Lucci, he had no secrets at all. While Odin's worldview shook, Lucci calmly finished his observation. Every mystery and structure of Odin's divine power had been carved into his mind, nothing missing. To Lucci, this power was like exquisite artwork, inspiring him deeply in how powers could be combined and used. But at the same time, its flaws and hidden wounds felt irritating. Especially the deficiency at the origin of Odin's soul, lost from 10,000 years of burning. To Lucci, it was a tiny black dot on flawless white jade, an intolerable defect. Odin had brought him to Asgard. Lucci felt he should solve this problem smoothly. More importantly, analyzing Odin's power let him glimpse the operational pattern and bloodline traits of Asgardian gods. Divine power is housed in the blood, growing by absorbing cosmic energy and feedback from the world tree. The upper limit is high, but the purity problem is common. Lucci understood. Asgardians were like containers, born with huge capacity, but their method of filling that container was crude. Too much sediment and impurities mixed into the water. Over time, it not only affected the water quality, but also wore and damaged the container itself. Then, Lucci's mind moved. Heaven-defying comprehension activated again. This time it wasn't mere analysis, it was a higher level. Creation. Your comprehension defies the heavens, combining the structure of Odin's power, the traits of Asgardian divine bloodlines, and the theory of cosmic energy origins. You begin creating a new divine power cultivation method for the Asgardian gods. Core principles established: purification, repair, sublimation. Model constructing, using origin true fire as furnace, guided by the 9 realms cyclic breathing method. Complete. Energy filtering / circulation system inferred. Complete. Method to nourish and repair soul origin wounds created. Complete. Naming. This method aims to purify divine power. It can be called a secret codex of divine power refinement. Boom. The moment the method fully formed in Lucci's heart, an invisible mysterious ripple spread outward from him. In the surrounding space, cosmic energy, previously calm, seemed to be stirred by a supreme decree, spontaneously beginning to operate and flow in a new, more efficient, purer form. Odin had barely recovered from shock when he felt the abnormal law fluctuation. He stared at Lucci, not understanding what he had done. Then Lucci raised his eyes, calmly meeting Odin's. He extended his right hand and lightly tapped forward with his index finger. An invisible golden light shot from his fingertip. It seemed unobtrusive, with no obvious energy waves, yet it transcended distance and speed, instantly appearing before Odin and sinking into his brow. Odin didn't even have time to react. The next instant, a massive, vast, delicate flood of information exploded in Odin's mind. Secret Codex of Divine Power Refinement. The opening outline read: Divine power is born from the cosmos, inherited through bloodline, and manifested within the self. But the cosmos is vast, energies are modeled. Bloodline inheritance has both strengths and flaws. Thus divine power often becomes mixed. Over time it settles, becoming hidden wounds, harming the origin and severing the path forward. Therefore this method is established, with 3 guiding principles: filtering, compression, temperature maintenance. Use the divine soul as guide, form an energy vortex, imitate the black hole principle, forcibly strip impurities from divine power. Then, with inhalation draw tidal energies, imitate a neutron star core, refine purified divine power and raise its quality. Finally, meditate with spirit, visualize the origin true fire, nourish the soul and repair past deficiencies. Just reading that rough outline, Odin's breathing stopped. A light unprecedented burst from his one eye, like he'd witnessed a divine revelation of creation. Remove impurities. Compress and refine. Warm and nourish the origin. This described exactly what he himself, and the entire Asgardian race, had been troubled by for 10,000 years. Odin trembled, head lowered, absorbing every word. Every sentence was like a jewel. Every line was a path. Every stage was written as if from the highest cosmic viewpoint, perfectly tailored to Asgardians. The subtlety of the concept, the profundity of the principle, the dominating effect. It surpassed the limits of Odin's imagination. He could almost foresee it. If any Asgardian practiced this codex, their power would transform in a short time. The purity of divine power would increase 10-fold, 100-fold. And for himself, the soul-nourishing method described for soul deficit was practically a life-saving prescription written just for him. If he trained it, not only could he compensate the hidden wounds of 10,000 years of conquest, he could revive the fading origin of his life and greatly extend his lifespan. This wasn't a training method anymore. This was gospel. A miracle. While Odin was overwhelmed, Lucci's calm, indifferent voice drifted into his ears. Father, your power has some issues. If you train this method, you can not only fill the hidden wounds, you may even extend your lifespan. His tone was so casual, like discussing something trivial. But to Odin, it hit harder than any epic or sacred hymn. Chapter 14, Odin's Decision, Open all forbidden lands. Lucci may go wherever he wishes. Odin stared at Lucci, his one eye filled with shock, trance, and complex emotions that trembled at the level of the soul. Mixed. Hidden injuries. Longevity. Lucci had spoken Odin's deepest secret, and most desired future, in the most ordinary tone imaginable. And this secret codex of divine power refinement was the solution to all of it. In that moment, Odin's heart filled with ecstasy and excitement unlike anything before. He thought his life had reached twilight, and Asgard's glory was nearing its limit. He had brought Lucci back for Asgard's next 10,000 years. But now Lucci offered more than the future. He offered the now. This codex wouldn't only solve Odin's personal problems, it would fundamentally change the fate of the entire Asgardian god race. It could strengthen every warrior's divine power, purify every mage's magic, elevate Asgardian civilization by an entire level. What a feat! Odin gazed at Lucci and suddenly realized limits. All of his previous arrangements and teachings were, in fact, a kind of restriction. A being like Lucci didn't need someone to teach him, nor anyone to arrange his path. What he needed was absolute freedom. Any rule, any prohibition, was merely an obstacle to understanding and transforming this world. I see. I understand completely. Odin took a deep breath, summoned his subordinates, and issued an oracle that shook all of Asgard. Proclaim my command as God King. From this day on, the fourth prince, Lucci, holds the highest authority in Asgard. All areas of the Asgardian palace, including but not limited to Odin's vault, which holds countless rare treasures from the 9 realms. Valhalla Hall, where heroic warriors of every dynasty sleep. The underground forbidden lands that seal ancient taboos. Even the foundational core of the World Tree. All regions are open to Prince Lucci unconditionally and without restriction. He may go wherever he wishes. See whatever he wishes. No one may obstruct or question him for any reason. This is Asgard's highest oracle. The moment the order fell, all of Asgard fell into dead silence. Then it erupted into uproar that seemed to lift the sky. Countless Asgardians stood dumbfounded, unable to comprehend the meaning. Highest authority. All forbidden zones opened. What kind of favor was this? Even Thor, the eldest, had never been granted such treatment. Why would the God King issue such an unbelievable oracle for this new fourth prince? In the Holy Queen's palace, Loki had finally finished his confinement and came to greet his mother. At that moment, he heard several maids talking not far away. Have you heard? The God King issued an order. Fourth Highness Lucci has the highest authority, Odin's vault, Valhalla, forbidden lands, he can go anywhere. Of course I heard. Gods, this is an honor not even Prince Thor has. Loki froze. His eyes widened, his mouth fell open. Shock and disbelief spread across his face. What? That Lucci holds the highest authority in Asgard. Why? Loki shouted, his voice echoing down the palace corridor. Odin's vault. Valhalla. Even Thor and I can't just enter those places whenever we want. Why can he, he's a newcomer, go anywhere? He had coveted the legendary treasures in Odin's vault for ages. No matter how much he begged, Odin always told him, the time is not yet. And now that privilege was given to an outsider. With resentment boiling, Loki stormed to Frigga. Frigga looked at Loki's jealous, furious face and sighed softly. She raised a finger. A beam of spiritual light passed, transmitting part of the secret codex of divine power refinement into Loki's mind. Loki. Look with your own eyes. That's why your father made this decision. As the flood of information entered him, the envy and anger on Loki's face were instantly replaced by another, more extreme emotion. Numb, stunned terror. As Asgard's magical genius, Loki understood better than anyone the greatness and horror of this codex. Purify divine power. Repair hidden injuries. Raise the bloodline's upper limit. This was created by Lucci. This wasn't just shaping the future of a person. It was creating the future of an entire race. Loki's mind went blank. His proud intelligence and talent felt like dust before Lucci's achievement. He finally understood why his father issued such an oracle. Because what Lucci gave to Asgard was far beyond what Asgard could give him. And yet, even understanding it clearly, dissatisfaction and jealousy still gnawed at him like venomous snakes. I still won't accept it, Loki gritted his teeth. The treasury. I want to go in too. A dangerous thought spread. Since father gave him the highest authority, then, could I secretly follow behind? Yes. That's it. Loki's eyes rolled, and a new scheme took shape again. Chapter 15, Odin's Vault, Observing the Eternal Spear. Comprehending, Royal Authority. After receiving the highest authority personally granted by Odin, the first place Lucci chose was Odin's Vault. Located beneath the Asgardian palace, this mysterious treasury contained the essence of Asgard's tens of thousands of years of conquest and accumulation, rare treasures and powerful relics enough to stir blood-soaked storms across the 9 realms. When Lucci arrived before the treasury's gate, forged from pure stellar metal, his steady steps paused slightly. With a single thought, he sensed the sneaking figure hiding in the shadow behind a stone pillar. Loki. The corner of Lucci's mouth lifted faintly. So you're preparing to follow me into the treasury? Lucci did not expose him. Because what Lucci thought of, inside the treasury, was the casket of ancient winters. And Loki's hidden life experience. Some words, some things, perhaps it was time Loki learned them. Good. This way, I can also stop him from running off again. Lucci made up his mind, pretended not to notice, and placed his hand on the heavy, cold treasure door. Buzz. Sensing the highest authority granted by Odin, countless complex runes on the door lit up one after another. Golden light spread like flowing water. With a low roar, the gate, capable of withstanding even an All-Father-level attack, opened automatically to both sides, revealing a mysterious world beyond. Lucci stepped inside calmly. Behind him, Loki's eyes flashed with faint joy. He immediately cast an illusion, turning nearly transparent, and slipped in like a breeze. Inside, the treasury space was far vaster than it appeared from outside. Countless dazzling treasures were displayed on suspended stands of energy, each radiating powerful auras. The moment Loki entered, his eyes went straight. He greedily scanned the legendary treasures. The Infinity Gauntlet, said to have been forged by the Dwarf King for ancient celestial beings, rumored to wield the power of the origin of the universe. The Eternal Flame, burning since the dawn of creation, capable of granting life, resurrecting the dead, and performing countless miracles. The Ether, a vessel of reality-warping particles crafted by the Dark Elves, capable of dragging the universe into eternal darkness. And countless relics, magical tools, sealed ancient monsters gathered from every corner of the 9 realms. Each one enough to drive the heroes of the 9 worlds mad. But Lucci ignored them all. His gaze locked onto the central stand. There, a spear hung quietly, simple in shape, glowing with a faint golden light. It was the symbol of Asgard's highest kingship, the god King Odin's sole weapon. Gungnir, the eternal spear. In Lucci's perception, this spear was more than a weapon. It felt like the embodiment of some supreme law, the concept of kingship, projected physically into reality. It was deeply connected to all of Asgard, the order of the 9 realms, and Odin's soul. Interesting. Lucci extended slender fingers and lightly touched the cold shaft. Boom. The instant of contact. A vast, majestic, unquestionable royal aura surged into his senses like a bursting dam. Every throw must hit. Every word must be kept. The message exploded in the depths of his soul like a great resonance. This wasn't an enchantment effect. It was the spear's most fundamental attribute. As long as it locked onto the target, no matter where they were in the universe, no matter how they dodged, it would hit. As long as the wielder held it and spoke, the words became blessed, irresistible edicts. This was the God King's spear. Lucci felt the spear's solemn, pure aura. A flash of realization crossed his deep eyes. The so-called, every throw must hit, was essentially the forced definition of causality. The moment it was thrown, the effect of striking the target was already destined at the causal level, no cause in between could change that ending. The so-called word is law was the forced distortion of reality. By relying on overwhelming will and authority, subjective language was converted into objective fact. These abilities had reached the level of laws, truly the realm of gods. But Lucci's interest didn't stop there. What he wanted to see was deeper. The soil that birthed these 2 abilities. This spear is only a carrier, an amplifier. The true core is what lies behind it. The concept called God King. Lucci's mind became clearer than ever. His hand still held the eternal spear, but his consciousness pierced through the weapon's existence and directly probed into an invisible sea of conceptual laws. Heaven-defying comprehension, fully detonated. You are observing the eternal spear. Your comprehension defies the heavens, insight gained into the concept of God King. Analyzing the composition of God King. You comprehend the essence of rule, establish order and unify will. You comprehend the essence of decree, define laws and enforce obedience. You comprehend the essence of judgment, decide good and evil, enforce causality. You comprehend the essence of guardian, protect the people and maintain the realm. You begin integrating the above concepts and comprehending a new supreme law. In that instant, Lucci's consciousness seemed to transform into a true king. He was no longer a detached observer, he was personally experiencing what it meant to be a God King. Experiencing thoughts that could determine the fate of billions of beings. Experiencing words that could shift the orbits of stars. Experiencing the weight and glory of carrying an entire civilization and carving a land of light from endless cosmic darkness. A mysterious state beyond words. Congratulations. Your comprehension defies the heavens, you have successfully comprehended the supreme law, royal authority. The moment Lucci comprehended, royal authority. A sudden, strange change occurred. The eternal spear in his hand, like a dragon that had slept for 10,000 years, abruptly awakened. It let out an unprecedentedly clear, passionate hum. Golden light surged skyward, illuminating the entire treasury in brilliance. The aura of the laws, every throw must hit, every word must be kept, multiplied tenfold, 100-fold compared to before. No longer was it passively sensed by Lucci. It actively, joyfully flowed into him, as if it had finally found its true master of destiny. Chapter 16, Divine Power Surges. Odin falls silent. Does this child intend to inherit my throne as Allfather? Directly. At the same time, in the hall of the God King, Odin sat upright upon his throne, and the endless profundity of the secret codex of divine power refinement still echoed in his mind. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. Boom. In that instant, Odin's divine power inside his body completely lost control, rampaging like boiling magma. A powerful resonance, like it came from the same origin, surged from the direction of the treasury, tugging at every trace of godly power within him. Especially the core of Odin's divine might, the authority of the God King, which grew so active it was nearly about to burst out of his body. What is happening? Odin rose in shock. Astonishment and disbelief flooded his eye as he stared toward the treasury. The eternal spear. It was the eternal spear resonating. No, more than the eternal spear. Someone was there, someone had touched the core of the authority of the God King, and had even gained the spear's acknowledgement. And the one in the treasury right now. Lucci. It couldn't be wrong. Absolutely couldn't be wrong. It was Lucci. Other than him, there was no second person capable of accomplishing something so outrageous. In Odin's mind, scenes from after he met Lucci flashed one after another. Before he was even born, he could ignite 10,000 fires for the royal line. Beneath the world tree, he resonated with the cosmos. In a single night, he read the 10,000-year collection and mastered all its knowledge. He casually drew the runic comprehensive diagram and defeated a grandmaster. At a glance he saw through the origin of an illusion and crushed Loki. In the grand arena, he created the secret codex of divine power refinement, enough to change the fate of all Asgard. All of it kept pushing the upper limit of what the word genius could possibly mean. And now, he had only just entered the treasury, and he directly comprehended what even Thor had never touched, the royal authority. Worse, he was being actively acknowledged by the eternal spear. Wasn't this simply absurd? Odin felt his thoughts spiral into utter chaos. He had already been prepared to entrust Asgard's future to Lucci. But now, it felt as if that future had arrived. A little too fast. A ridiculous yet strangely real thought galloped wildly through his mind like an untamed horse. This child, how old is he? The next step, could it be? He wants to directly inherit my position as God King. At that thought, Odin's expression turned indescribably strange. He was still sitting on the throne, and hadn't even thought about making an abdication speech. And that successor over there had already completed the eternal spear. Isn't this a bit off? Isn't it far too disrespectful to me, the current God King? And yet, that conflicted feeling was quickly replaced by something stronger and hotter. Pride. No, expectation. Inheriting the throne. Fine. Excellent. Odin even wished Lucci would inherit it immediately. With Lucci's comprehension and terrifying growth speed, what kind of dazzling future would Asgard move toward under his rule? Allfather. That would only be the starting point. Single universe level. Conceptual. Even Odin felt that perhaps even those words could not define Lucci's future achievements. Asgard's future was no longer merely stable. It was taking off. Soaring toward an unprecedented supreme realm, even Odin could only look up to it and imagine it. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Thinking this, Odin could no longer contain his ecstasy and excitement. He burst into booming laughter that shook the entire hall of the God King. He sat back upon the throne, staring toward the treasury, his eye shining with an unprecedented brilliance. Go on, Lucci Odinson. Explore and comprehend to your heart's content. Show me where your limits are. The whole of Asgard will be the foundation for your takeoff. Inside Odin's vault. When Lucci released his hand, the restless eternal spear finally calmed down. Everything that had happened was witnessed in full by Loki, who had been hiding nearby. His mouth hung open wide enough to swallow a goose egg. His eyes were dull, empty. Unbelievable. When the aura of the royal authority erupted just now, Loki felt as if his soul was going to be crushed by that majesty. He had watched a supreme divine artifact, one even his father had to treat seriously, become as obedient as a kitten in Lucci's hands. A monster, he's a monster. Loki hid behind a pillar, trembling all over, and never again dared to think of opposing Lucci. Lucci calmly glanced at Loki's hiding place and ignored him. Comprehending the royal authority was, in the long road of cultivation, nothing more than a small wave casually picked up, an added application method in his power system. It didn't stir his emotions much. His gaze left the eternal spear and fell upon another corner of the treasury. There, a box emitting frigid air rested quietly on an obsidian pedestal. The casket of ancient winters. A sacred relic from Jotunheim, land of the frost giants, containing an ultimate icy power capable of freezing an entire realm. The opposite of fire. Interesting. Lucci stepped forward and reached out, directly lifting the silver box into his hand. Click. The moment he picked it up, thick frost condensed across its surface, and a terrifying cold rushed at his face, cold enough to freeze a soul and stop time itself. It was tyrannical, as if it meant to drag everything around into eternal deathly silence and absolute zero. But the instant that cold touched Lucci's body, the origin true fire marvelous art within him began to operate on its own. A golden breath of true flame, representing burning and light, seeped out from his body. That domineering cold immediately became docile, like a mouse seeing a cat. All violence and dead silence vanished, leaving only the purest, cold, attribute behind. Lucci toyed with the casket of ancient winters in his hand, and comprehension unfolded again. You are observing the casket of ancient winters. You begin analyzing the essence of the law of absolute ice. You comprehend the essence of low temperature, the slowing and stopping of molecular motion. You comprehend the essence of condensation, orderly transformation of matter's form. You comprehend the essence of extinction, the end of energetic activity and reduction of entropy. You are observing the concept of absolute zero. Lucci's consciousness entered a world of pure white. Here, there was no motion, no energy, no time. Everything existed in absolute, eternal stillness. This was another ultimate form of the universe, thermal death. In contrast to fire's release of energy and creation of light, ice represented convergence of energy and absolute stasis. They were two sides of the cosmos. Two original laws that could restrain each other and also transform into each other. Congratulations. Your comprehension defies the heavens, you have insight into the essence of the law of ice. Lucci opened his eyes. He raised his left hand. With a thought, pure white cold, carrying absolute stillness, appeared at his fingertips. He raised his right hand. Golden true flame, carrying eternal burning and light, also ignited at his fingertips. Fire and ice. Creation and extinction. At this moment, two utterly opposite primal forces appeared calmly and harmoniously above his fingertips, forming a perfect, inviolable microcycle, like a tiny supreme ultimate. He was mastering both opposing forces at once. Chapter 17, Loki's Origin. Lucci says it in one sentence. Loki collapses, so I was picked up and brought back too. While Lucci played with the casket of ancient winters and sensed the mysteries of the law of ice, Loki, hiding in the distance, felt something strange. Like being pulled by a magnet, his gaze uncontrollably fell on the silver box. A deep, inexplicable throbbing rose from the depths of his blood and spread through his whole body. He felt his body longing for the box, his soul calling out to that cold. Unconsciously, his skin faintly took on a bluish tint, and strange lines like ice crystals traced along him. But he noticed nothing. He only knew he wanted to get closer. For a time he forgot everything, stepping toward Lucci without realizing it. Lucci looked at Loki as Loki walked out on his own. Lucci's gaze shifted lightly, as if it could see through the origin of all things. In an instant, every secret was laid bare. Under Lucci's perception, Loki's body displayed a strange double structure inside and out. The outer layer bore the characteristics of Asgardian bloodline, wrapped in an incredibly clever illusionary energy, making him look no different from an Asgardian. But beneath that mask, his true blood radiated a cold, deep blue light. Pure. Frost giant blood. And the concentration in his blood was extremely high. Royal blood. He used illusions to change his form and suppress the power of his lineage. Whether from the traveler's memories or records Lucci had read in the library, the war history between Asgard and Jotunheim made the truth clear. Lucci looked at Loki, who stared at the casket of ancient winters with confused eyes, and spoke calmly. Loki. Instead of envying Thor's hammer that doesn't belong to you, you should come reclaim what belongs to you. Loki gently handed the casket of ancient winters to Loki. Then he spoke words that flipped Loki's world upside down. You are not Odin's son. Your true identity is the descendant of the frost giant king, Laufey. Loki's blunt words thundered through Loki's spirit like the chaotic lightning at the dawn of creation. Loki sobered instantly. In that moment, his reason, pride, and cognition shattered into pieces. No. No. You're talking nonsense. Loki's face turned paper white. He stumbled back 2 steps as if he had heard the most terrifying curse in the world, then roared hysterically. Impossible. How could I be that lowly, ugly monster? I am Asgard's prince. I am Odin's son. I am Loki Odinson. His emotions completely spiraled out of control. His whole body sank into panic and confusion. His identity, his pride, everything he had was built upon Odin's son. He was the child of the god king, noble prince of Asgard, qualified to compete with Thor and aim for the highest throne. But now Loki was saying it was all a lie. That he was a frost giant, a race regarded as enemies and monsters by Asgard. How could that be possible? It had to be impossible. Loki's expression did not change as he watched Loki lose control. He merely stared calmly, like someone watching an unreasonable child. Really, you've never noticed the difference between you and Thor? Loki's voice pierced straight into the deepest corner of Loki's heart, the place he had deliberately avoided, refused to think about. Thor is reckless and impulsive, powerful, born with affinity for thunder and lightning. And you, intelligent and sharp, but physically weak. You're skilled at illusions and ice magic. Have you ever wondered why you learn ice magic more easily than other magic? Have you ever wondered why every time you fight Thor, he can easily beat you until your nose is bruised and swollen, until your strength can't catch up to his at all? Each question was a heavy hammer striking Loki's defenses. Loki's roaring gradually stopped, replaced by ragged breathing. His body began trembling uncontrollably. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Yes. Why? He had always believed it was simply a difference in talent between him and Thor. But thinking carefully now, something was fundamentally different. Seeing Loki waver, Loki lifted the casket of ancient winters in his hand and delivered the final blow. Most importantly, it's the connection between you and this casket of ancient winters. A connection from bloodline. Why don't you touch it? Something irresistible seemed to glow in Loki's eyes. Loki raised his hand trembling. His reason screamed, don't touch it, but his body, his blood, desperately craved that cold. Finally, his shaking fingertips touched the casket of ancient winters' icy surface. Click. The instant of contact. The casket of ancient winters' cold not only did not harm him, it spread warmly along his arm, like it had found family. Loki's skin instantly turned the deep blue of a frost giant. His eyes turned a ruby-like deep red. His true form, a frost giant prince, was fully exposed in that moment. Ah! Loki screamed in fear when he saw his arm turn blue. He jerked his hand back, and the blue slowly faded back to normal. But that cold, real touch had been branded into his soul. It was true. All of it. All true. He really was a frost giant. Loki collapsed to the ground in despair, his eyes losing all light, empty and dazed. His pride. His ambition for the throne. Before this brutal truth, it all seemed ridiculous, absurd. If he was a frost giant, then what had he been doing all this time? A clown on stage, desperately performing a monologue that never belonged to him. In this moment, Loki's world completely collapsed. Chapter 18, Loki, your road is too narrow. Mjolnir submits, the thunder god's hammer gets rejected. Seeing Loki's dejected expression, Loki calmly returned the casket of ancient winters to its place. He hadn't exposed Loki's origins out of malice. He simply didn't want Loki to fall. But in Loki's view, Loki's goal, living for the throne and competing for favor, was far too narrow. With frost giant royal blood, and the best magic education in Asgard, Loki could have walked a unique path, an overlord of ice and shadow. Instead, all his talent and mind were wasted on scheming against Thor and showing off petty cleverness. Your origin doesn't define you, Loki's voice echoed. Loki's empty eyes shifted slightly toward Loki. Loki continued calmly. Frost Giant Blood gives you the power to command ultimate ice. Its essence is stillness and silence, with limitless potential. And Asgardian magic, especially the illusions you excel at, are essentially deception and distortion between mind and reality. If you push these two powers to the extreme, it's enough to stand at the peak of the 9 realms. Lucci paused, his deep eyes fixed on Loki. But what about you? You only learned the surface. Using that shallow skin, you act clever, grow jealous, and compete for a throne. Loki, your road is too narrow. Lucci's words struck Loki like a heavy hammer. Loki jolted awake, and light returned to his eyes. Yes. What had he been doing? He clearly possessed 2 powerful talents, completely different. Yet every day he thought only about how to prank Thor, how to perform better before Father, how to sit on that golden chair. Had he ever truly calmed down to study his own power? Lucci's words cut through the fog of jealousy and obsession like lightning. For the first time, Loki began to examine himself. Lucci nodded slightly and continued. You can remain the god of mischief, only capable of petty schemes. Or you can become the king of ice and shadow, one who truly commands ice and illusion. The future path is your choice. After speaking, Lucci ignored him and continued observing the treasury's artifacts. He had said what needed to be said. Whether this seed withered or grew into a towering tree, that was up to Loki. Loki sat on the ground in silence for a long time. God of mischief. King of ice and shadow. Those 2 completely different titles echoed repeatedly in his heart. He remembered the endless terror when Lucci dominated him with the illusion Heart Demon Labyrinth. That was the first moment he realized how powerful illusions could become. He also remembered Lucci's fingertips earlier, pure white, emitting an aura of absolute stillness. That was the first moment he realized how pure ice could become. And those were both his fields of strength. He didn't know how long passed before Loki stood up. He stared at Lucci's back, his eyes filled with unprecedented complexity, reverence, gratitude, and a trace of unwillingness. I will think about it, he whispered. Then he fled Odin's vault without looking back. Lucci glanced faintly, expression unchanged. He didn't care what Loki chose. Because no matter what path Loki walked, Lucci was fully confident in what Loki would ultimately become. Before absolute power, all conspiracy was nothing but boring entertainment. After Loki left, the treasury returned to peace. Lucci's gaze swept across the displays until it stopped at something not far away. A silver warhammer rested quietly on a stone pedestal. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. Forged by dwarves using the core of a dying star, smelted from Uryu, and enchanted by Odin himself with a worthiness spell. The power of storms and thunder. Lucci approached and gently grasped Mjolnir's handle. Boom. The moment he touched it, a violent storm of lightning erupted from the hammer, trying to blast him away. But this resistance was meaningless before Lucci. With a slight pulse of the royal authority, the storm power collapsed instantly. The next moment, comprehension began again. You are observing Mjolnir's storm power. You begin analyzing its energy composition and operating principle. You comprehend the essence of force. You comprehend the essence of storm. To Lucci, the thunder within Mjolnir was merely the high-speed movement and collision of countless positive and negative charges. The so-called storm force was simply forced manipulation of airflow. Everything was clear. Too crude. In Lucci's mind, memories from his past life surfaced, methods of thunder beyond mere destruction. Thunder was not just violent ruin. It could also be heavenly judgment, the vitality of renewal, and righteous power that sweeps away evil. Control of thunder. 5 thunder rights. Divine thunder. Higher applications that contained path and law flashed through his mind. Through comprehension that defies the heavens, combined with concepts of thunder methods from past life memories, you begin creating a new way to use thunder and lightning. You reconstruct the law of thunder, taking judgment, vitality, and breaking evil as its core. Naming the technique. Draw the thunder of the 9 heavens and enact the great might of divine punishment. This method shall be called 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder Art. Boom. The instant this new thunder method took shape in Lucci's mind, the Mjolnir in his hand trembled as if it sensed an unbelievable heavenly power. Its violent and uncontrolled storm energy, once raging, became extremely obedient, like a courtier kneeling before an emperor, before the 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder Art. Mjolnir let out an unprecedentedly cheerful, excited hum. It no longer resisted Lucci at all. It floated lightly from the stone pedestal as if by instinct. Then, like a puppy finding its master, it circled Lucci happily and affectionately, electricity flashing around its head as if expressing excitement and surrender. It had found him. Its true owner. But faced with this artifact's active recognition, Lucci only glanced at it calmly and shook his head in disgust. A hammer is too bulky. It doesn't fit my fighting style. You, stay here. With that, he turned and walked deeper into the treasury, completely ignoring the famous hammer of Thor. Bzzz. Mjolnir's humming abruptly stopped. It froze midair, and even the electrical glow on its head seemed to dim. Was it being hated? Thor's mighty hammer, famous across the 9 realms, was actually rejected. Mjolnir went blank for a long moment. Then, as if unwilling, it accelerated with a whoosh and darted in front of Lucci, gently rubbing his arm with its handle like it was saying, "Master, take me with you. I'm useful." "Don't follow me," Lucci said without looking, flicking it away like swatting a fly. Mjolnir refused to give up. It flew back and kept rubbing. Soon, an absurd scene unfolded in the treasury. Wherever Lucci went, the silver warhammer followed like sticky candy. Sometimes it cleared the path, sometimes it circled him, sometimes it even tapped his back with its handle. Doing everything it could to win its new owner's favor. Lucci finally felt a trace of irritation. He stopped, turned to the floating hammer, and said calmly, "If you follow me again, I'll throw you back into the forge and remake you." Bzzz. Mjolnir was so frightened its lightning nearly went out. It could tell Lucci wasn't joking. Under Lucci's indifferent gaze, the pitiful hammer could only sulk back to its stone pedestal, landing with a dull thunk like a clumsy child. Lucci nodded in satisfaction, ignored it, and left the treasury after finishing his inspection. The magnificent doors of the treasury slowly closed. On Mjolnir's hammerhead, a faint spark flickered for a brief moment. Like a tear of grievance. Chapter 19, Thor's Growth, Mjolnir's Trial. The hammer isn't happy. On the other side, in Thor's palace, beast-like roars and the thunder of metal impacts echoed without stopping. The palace's largest open space had become a training ground, wrecked and chaotic. Crater-like pits of various sizes pocked the floor. Burned traces of lightning scarred the walls. The air reeked of hot ozone and steaming sweat. Again. Thor stood bare-chested. Bronze muscles knotted like granite, every line packed with explosive power. Sweat streamed down his golden hair and cheeks, dripping onto the hot ground and evaporating instantly. In his hand was the imitation hammer Odin had given him. Ever since that day, since being defeated by Lucci's understated finger, Thor had begun brutal training. He was the eldest prince of Asgard, future god-king, famous as the thunder god across the 9 realms. And yet he'd been crushed by a single finger from that seemingly weak younger brother. That was a humiliation worse than dying on the battlefield. From that day on, Thor became a different person. He no longer went drinking in taverns, no longer strutted around with the Warriors 3. He locked himself in the training ground and trained like a madman. He squeezed his divine power to the limit, again and again, until his body could no longer condense even a trace of lightning. Then he'd rest briefly, and start again. He replayed the sensation of losing to Lucci over and over. That seemingly ordinary finger contained mysteries of cosmic origin he couldn't comprehend. But instinctively, he understood how crude and laughable his former strength was before that level. He stopped merely releasing thunder. He began trying to control it. He tried to compress violent lightning into smaller, sharper, more penetrating forms. Day after day of insane training didn't make his power amount explode, but in quality and control, he advanced tremendously. Boom. Thor roared again, swinging the imitation hammer down. A chain of lightning far more condensed than before shot from its head and precisely struck a distant metal dummy, melting it into a puddle of molten iron. Ha, ha. Thor panted hard, but his eyes burned with unprecedented excitement and fighting intent. He could feel he'd become stronger. Now he needed proof. A chance to prove his growth to everyone, and to himself. He couldn't stand showing off with this ridiculous imitation every day. He wanted real power. He wanted the real Mjolnir. Only then would he have the strength to fight Lucci again. Father. Thor grabbed nearby battle gear, threw it on, and charged out of the palace toward the hall of the God King. Odin sat on his throne, cultivating the secret codex of divine power refinement. Heavy, rapid footsteps sounded. Thor's robust figure strode into the hall with fierce momentum. "Father," Thor declared loudly, "I will accept Mjolnir's trial." His eyes no longer held their old rash arrogance. Instead there was endurance and resolve forged through countless hardships. "I don't want to use this toy anymore." He raised the imitation hammer and met Odin's one-eyed gaze directly. "I'm ready. I'll take the hammer that truly belongs to me." Odin watched him silently, his all-encompassing gaze seeing through Thor's changes. Thor's divine power was more condensed. His will was stronger. His irritable temperament wasn't fully restrained yet, but he was already very different from the reckless men who only solved problems with brute force. Satisfaction surfaced in Odin's eye. Though, compared to Loki's unreasonable comprehension, this growth still felt somewhat insignificant. But as Asgard's future protector, Thor reaching this level was already good. At least he had begun to understand that power was not only destruction. "Very good," Odin nodded slowly, his majestic voice echoing in the hall. "I have seen your growth. If you have decided, then come with me." Odin rose and led the excited Thor toward the underground treasury. When the doors opened, Thor's eyes were instantly drawn to the silver warhammer on the stone pedestal. Mjolnir. He could feel the storm power within it, vast as a sea of stars. This was the power he had dreamed of. "Go," Odin stepped aside and said calmly. "Prove your worthiness." Thor took a deep breath, suppressed his excitement, and walked to the pedestal. He reached out and tightly gripped Mjolnir's cold handle. "Rise." Thor exploded with all his strength. His arm muscles bulged like stone, veins popping like small snakes. He poured all his power and will into that grip. At first, the hammer didn't move, like it was connected to all of Asgard's earth. But Thor refused to give up. Loki's indifferent eyes flashed in his mind. The humiliation of being defeated by one finger surged back. "Get up!" he roared. Bzzz. As if sensing his unyielding will and a gradually maturing protector's heart, Mjolnir trembled slightly. And finally acknowledged him. Click. With a soft sound, Mjolnir lifted from the pedestal. Lifted. Ha ha, ha ha ha. The moment the hammer fully left the stone, Thor's ecstasy burst out in earth-shaking laughter. He did it. He finally succeeded. He felt the lightning power from the hammer flow into his body. He felt stronger than ever. Odin watched, relief shining in his eye. Excellent, Thor had finally grown into a warrior worthy of the name. But as Thor's excitement surged, he vaguely felt something off. Even though Mjolnir granted him power, he clearly sensed the hammer didn't feel much joy. It was like a loyal soldier executing a mission, yet deep inside it carried a faint loss. Unhappiness. Strange. Thor shook the hammer suspiciously. The feeling remained. But he soon shoved the doubt away. Forget it. Loss or joy didn't matter. What mattered was that the hammer was his now. He hugged Mjolnir tightly, feeling its overflowing power. His eyes burned again. He turned sharply toward Loki's palace. Loki. I'm not the same as before. I finally have the strength to challenge you again. Chapter 20, Thor challenges again. Loki, come, let me teach you how to use a hammer. Loki's palace stood beside the massive roots of the world tree, surrounded by rich energy and elegant scenery. At this moment, Loki sat leisurely beneath a golden tree, reading an old book that recorded the strange phenomena of the universe among cloud-covered branches. To him, analyzing the origin of all things was far more interesting than fighting or killing. Then, from far to near, a loud laugh shattered the quiet. Loki. I'm coming. Boom. A dazzling figure wrapped in thunder crashed down from the sky, smashing into the lawn before the palace and blasting up dirt and grass. It was Thor, fresh from obtaining Mjolnir, brimming with confidence. He raised the silver warhammer high. Electric serpents danced around its head, crackling violently as an oppressive storm aura spread in all directions. Loki. Get up and fight me again. Thor pointed the hammer at Loki, voice soaring. Today I wash away my shame. Come, let me show you the true power of Thor. His momentum was indeed more than a tear stronger than before. The violent force of lightning made the surrounding space ripple faintly. But facing that domineering challenge, Loki's reaction made it feel like Thor was punching cotton. Loki didn't even lift his head. He calmly flipped a page and said lightly. Not interested. The tone was like refusing a salesman, blunt, perfunctory, full of disregard. Thor's grin froze instantly. Not interested. I, Thor, the great prince of Asgard, acknowledged by Mjolnir, power soaring, have come to duel. And you say? Not interested. Rage exploded straight into Thor's skull. What humiliation. Fine. Thor roared, fully enraged. He stopped talking and decided to force Lucci to move with action. Take this hammer. He swung Mjolnir down with fury, pouring divine power into it without hesitation. Storm thunder. Rumble. In an instant, the sky changed. The clear heavens were swallowed by dark clouds. Countless electric serpents whipped through them, releasing ear-splitting thunder. Buckets of lightning crashed down from the sky under Mjolnir's pull, gathering around Thor to form a destructive thunderstorm. The entire palace was engulfed. Sand and stone flew. Wind screamed. The power was terrifying. If this strike landed in the outside world, it could flatten a hill. Thor believed that before such might, even Lucci would have to take it seriously. But just as the power was about to descend, Lucci's indifferent voice sounded again. Stop. Lucci finally closed his book and lifted his head. He looked at the roaring storm and shook his head faintly. There was no solemnity, no surprise in his eyes. Only a trace of disappointment. This isn't using a hammer. This is picking up a hammer. You're not riding thunder and lightning. You're just passively releasing lightning. Lucci's words were like a basin of icy water poured over Thor's head, leaving him stunned. Using a hammer? Passive release. What did that mean? As Thor's confusion and anger tangled together, Lucci reached out gently in Thor's direction. The next moment, a scene that shocked Thor and shattered his worldview happened again. Bzzz. Mjolnir, in Thor's hand, seemed to hear a supreme call. It let out an excited, cheerful hum. Then, ignoring Thor completely, it tore free from his grip with enormous force, slipping straight out of his clenched palm. What? Thor stared in shock as the hammer turned into a silver streak. Whoosh! It flew joyfully, and even irritably, straight to Lucci. The whole process was smooth, without the slightest hesitation. Without Mjolnir's guidance, the storm clouds instantly dispersed. What is happening? Thor stood there, completely blank, staring at his empty hands, then at the hammer before Lucci. Mjolnir circled Lucci affectionately like a puppy, its electric glow flickering as if screaming. I finally found my true master. Mjolnir. Thor shouted in disbelief. Come back. Come back. But Mjolnir ignored him entirely, still happily pleasing its new owner. How can you do that? Thor trembled with anger, pointing at the hammer as if he'd been betrayed by the heaviest thing in the world. I'm your master. I was just holding you. His tone sounded like a resentful abandoned lover. The whole scene was humiliatingly funny. Thor's newly built confidence was shattered once again by Lucci in a way he couldn't understand. All that remained in his mind was, why? What is this? Why? Lucci remained calm as he watched Thor slump into self-doubt. Watch carefully, Lucci said lightly, holding Mjolnir. This is called a true thunder method. As he spoke, he casually tossed Mjolnir into the air and activated the 10,000 Sovereign's thunder art. Spear of Divine Sky. Bzzz. Instantly, above the ninefold heavens, thunder exploded from the void. One after another, divine thunder, far purer than anything Thor had summoned, erupted in golden light and descended, drawn by an unseen power. This was no longer violent, chaotic energy. Like the most obedient soldiers, the thunder rapidly converged, compressed, and took shape under Lucci's will. In a blink, a thunder spear formed with Mjolnir as its tip, 100 meters long, golden divine lightning condensed to the extreme, radiating supreme judgment and destruction. Countless tiny thunder runes appeared and vanished along its body. The space where its tip pointed warped slightly, as if it couldn't bear such masculine, overwhelming power. Thor stared at the spear in the air, nearly forgetting to breathe. He felt that in quantity, the power might not exceed the storm he had just raised. But in quality, it was utterly different. If his lightning was ordinary iron, Lucci's was steel forged 1,000 times. This wasn't a difference in degree. It was a difference in dimension. But that was only the beginning. Net of divine punishment. Lucci spoke again, fingers shifting. The spear of divine sky instantly collapsed. transforming into hundreds of millions of thin, sharp golden threads. They darted and intertwined in midair, weaving a massive golden net that covered the sky in a second. A net made purely of the law of thunder and lightning. Every node flashed with runes that shattered evil and destroyed demons. The aura it emitted seemed capable of erasing any wickedness instantly. 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder Prison. With Lucci's final move, the net suddenly tightened and transformed into a gigantic lightning sphere cage, suspending Mjolnir at its center. Within the cage, 10,000 thunders raced and lightning blazed, like a real hell of thunder. Yet strangely, none of that violent power leaked even a breath. All energy was perfectly restrained within. Finally, Lucci waved his hand, and the heavenly thunder illusion vanished as if it had never existed. Mjolnir, having been baptized in the thunder prison, hummed in satisfaction, shining even brighter, and excitedly flew back toward Lucci. Unfortunately, Lucci only flicked his finger and bounced it back toward Thor. Mjolnir hesitated slightly, then flew to Thor. Thor instinctively caught the hammer, still in extreme shock, unable to regain his senses for a long time. Spear of Divine Sky. Net of Divine Punishment. 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder Prison. So thunder and lightning could be used like this. This was true. Control of thunder. Compared to Lucci, everything Thor had done before was basically just hammering. Chapter 21, Pointing Out Thor, Tenfold Blessing Boost. Big bro. You're my real big bro. Thunder is not only violence, it is also vitality and judgment. Lucci's voice, like a morning bell and an evening drum, struck Thor's heart and jolted him awake from his shock. You carry the bloodline of the thunder god, but you only understand one side of it and not the other. This is the true power of the laws of thunder. Lucci lifted a finger slightly into the air. The 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder art was revealed. 9 heavens divine thunder, draw it down and gather it into your body. Forge it into a spear of the sky, and wield the power of judgment. Condense wind and cloud from all directions. Hear my command, weave the net of heavenly punishment, seal the vitality of all things. A vast, intricate secret of thunder law unfolded before Thor's eyes, opening a door into a brand new world. Thor's face was full of astonishment. Almost unconsciously, he followed Lucci's guidance and tried to move his divine power. Boom. The instant his divine power surged, he could clearly feel the connection between himself and Mjolnir grow closer than ever before. It was no longer a mere energy link, but something deeper, resonance. He could feel Mjolnir breathing, could hear the pulse of thunderous power within it. With a single thought, he unleashed lightning and thunder that were at least 10 times fiercer than before. More importantly, this lightning was no longer a wild, uncontrollable horse. It became like an extension of his arm, something he could freely control, compress, condense, and shape. An unprecedented, intense sensation flooded his limbs. Thor's eyes widened further and further, his rugged face filled with incomparable exhilaration. Unbelievable power. A power beyond imagination, like boiling magma, raced violently through his body. Compared to a few minutes ago, he felt like a completely different person. If before he'd been a child holding a lighter, only able to light a campfire passively, then now he was an adult wielding a laser welding gun, able to cut and refine anything in the world as he pleased. All of it, every change, was thanks to Lucci's calm, gentle guidance and the mysterious, unrivaled mantra of the 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder art. Thor's ecstasy was beyond words. He needed to vent. He needed to see with his own eyes just how powerful he'd become in this very moment. Lightning flashed in Thor's gaze as he fixed on the far skyline, outside Asgard's palace, a towering, uninhabited mountain peak thousands of meters away. He fused the mystery of the 10,000 Sovereigns Thunder art into his heart, merged it with his divine power, and let out a roar that shook the earth. He no longer foolishly swung the hammer like before, smashing at things with brute force. Instead, he copied what Lucci had just demonstrated, using the blood of the thunder god as the core, Mjolnir as the medium, and his will as the guide. He raised his arm high and issued a new decree belonging to a reborn god of thunder. Divine Sky Spear. Rumble. The roar of thunder was fiercer than it had ever been. Golden, sacred lightning poured down from the sky and gathered at unbelievable speed onto Mjolnir's hammerhead. Under Thor's guidance, that sacred lightning compressed and condensed frantically. Though it was far smaller than Lucci's, only several meters long, it was a massive leap forward. A gigantic spear of thunder, blazing with golden lightning, condensed and formed above Thor's head. Go. Thor gritted his teeth and pointed Mjolnir toward the distant peak. Whoosh! The golden thunder spear tore through the sky in an instant, leaving behind a long golden trail. Its speed surpassed even sound, perhaps even light. Almost the moment Thor pointed, the spear had already crossed the distance with terrifying precision and struck the mountain summit. There was no earth-shaking explosion. No deafening roar. Under ultimate compression of energy and law, the divine sky spear displayed incomparable piercing and cutting power. Thor watched as a dazzling golden light faded from the mountaintop. Then, under his stunned gaze, the summit, hundreds of meters high, remained exactly as it had been. Then slid sideways, smoothly and silently, as if on glass. Bang! It crashed into the adjacent ravine, kicking up smoke and dust into the sky. Cut! A mountain that had stood for tens of thousands of years was cleanly severed by his strike. The cross-section was mirror smooth, and in places the melt had a glass-like texture from extreme heat. Gulp! Thor swallowed hard. He stared at his own hand, then at the distant mountain that had become a flat-topped peak, and his entire body shook from the shock. This was my doing. Me. Since when was I this strong? Only now did he truly understand how accurate Lucci's earlier words were, "Don't call the hammer. Command it." Only now did he realize how childish and ridiculous his so-called power of thunder had been in front of the true laws of thunder. His pride. All his defiance. That foolish heart that loved to challenge everything. In this instant, it was as if it had been pierced and obliterated again and again by 10,000 spears from the heavens, leaving not even a trace behind. What rose from the deepest part of his soul instead was worship. Respect. So Lucci wasn't humiliating me. He was teaching me. He was telling me, in a way I could understand, how weak I was, and how strong I could become in the future. Thinking of that, Thor could no longer suppress his excitement and gratitude. He stared at Lucci, his eyes utterly changed. Lucci. No. He shook his head hard, feeling that title couldn't express his mood anymore. Big bro. You're my big brother. From now on. If you tell me to do anything, I'll do it, no excuses. At that moment, Thor completely cast aside dignity and restraint, voluntarily becoming Lucci's most loyal, most fanatical little follower. Chapter 22, In the Blink of Time, Hot-Blooded Thor, the warriors 3 of Asgard grow suspicious. Lucci watched Thor leave, as excited as if he'd been injected with chicken blood, without showing the slightest emotion. To him, pointing Thor in the right direction was only a small act. Like a top mathematician watching an elementary student solve a problem in the clumsiest way, mentioning a more efficient formula wouldn't stir any waves in their heart. He turned his gaze back to the root system of the enormous golden world tree and submerged once more into the sea of knowledge. This environment really was exceptional. As the fulcrum of the 9 realms, the world tree's roots reached deeply into the underlying laws of the cosmos. It wasn't just an intersection of energies, it was also a gathering place for higher dimensional information such as space, time, and causality. Studying here allowed Lucci to comprehend things while practicing the 9 realms cyclic breathing method far more efficiently than elsewhere. In this calm state of reading and perception, time passed slowly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Lucci read almost all the classics on energy and laws in Asgard's library, turning that knowledge into nutrients for his own understanding. As his comprehension deepened, he gradually sensed a new, unprecedented power. It existed everywhere, yet was extremely difficult to detect. It wasn't traceable like the laws of space, nor directly observable like the laws of energy. It was like a boundless, formless river, silently flowing beneath everything. All matter, all energy, even laws themselves, were forced to flow along this long river, from past to future. Time. A bright interest lit up in Lucci's eyes. Before, though he knew time existed, he had always been only an onlooker and experiencer, drifting passively down the long river of time. But now he could touch the river, understand its current, and even wanted to reverse its speed. He closed his eyes and focused all his attention on sensing that invisible power. Meanwhile, in Asgard, there was a tavern filled with the scent of ale and laughter. Having mastered the 10,000 sovereigns' thunder art, Thor summoned his 3 closest friends, the warriors 3 of Asgard. One of them was Volstagg, burly, astonishingly hardy, holding a giant battle axe. The other 2 were Fandral, skilled with the sword and self-proclaimed charming, and Hogun of Vanaheim, quiet and steady, deadly with his mace. Friends. Thor planted a boot on the oak table and roared triumphantly. I'm sick of these peaceful, moldy days in Asgard. It's time for the warriors of our fairy palace to make our names ring through the 9 realms again. He drained the wine in his cup and slammed it down. I've decided to go to Jotunheim and teach those frost giants a lesson. The moment Thor finished, the tavern, noisy just a heartbeat earlier, fell silent. Volstagg set down the massive roast he was holding. Fandral stopped flirting with the waitress. A trace of solemnity appeared on Hogun's usually unreadable face. Thor, are you out of your mind? Volstagg frowned. Jotunheim isn't a playground. Back then we defeated Laufey, but the frost giant's main force is still there. It's just the 4 of us. Are you rushing to your death? Agreed, Fandral said, forcing down his smile. Your courage is admirable, but it isn't wise. We can't put ourselves in danger on impulse. Hogun didn't speak, but the agreement in his eyes said everything. They acknowledged Thor was strong, but they didn't believe 4 men could fight an entire realm of frost giants. Ha, sending me to my death. Hearing his friend's concern, Thor didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed with absolute confidence. He extended his hand. Mjolnir roared, crashed through the window, and landed in his palm. Buzz. A thunderous pressure several times stronger than before erupted instantly from the hammer, shaking tables and chairs. The 3 warriors felt the condensed lightning power and their expressions changed at once. This is Mjolnir. Fandral's eyes went wide. Thor, you got its approval. Of course. Thor puffed his chest proudly. Just a little while ago. Volstagg and Hogun exchanged a look, seeing surprise and joy in each other's eyes. If Thor could truly wield the real Mjolnir, his strength would change drastically. Perhaps. Going to Jotunheim wasn't completely impossible. But Thor's next words plunged them into fresh confusion. And let me tell you. Thor's eyes shone with excitement as he spoke mysteriously. Mastering Mjolnir is only one part. The other. A more powerful killer move. Killer move. The true power of thunder. The 3 warriors looked at each other, completely baffled. Volstagg scratched his head suspiciously. Thor, what are you talking about? Mjolnir represents the strongest power of thunder, doesn't it? Could there be something stronger than Mjolnir's lightning? In their minds, Thor's hammer was the ultimate embodiment of thunder and lightning. Yet Thor was saying, I have even more power. How could that be possible? Seeing their blank faces, Thor only smiled proudly and didn't explain. The might of the 10,000 sovereigns' thunder art couldn't be clearly described with words. He wanted to use facts, on the battlefield, to shock his friends. In short, are you coming or not? Thor demanded. The 3 warriors exchanged looks and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. They knew Thor's personality. Once he decided, he couldn't be changed. If they refused, he would go alone, hammer in hand, charging recklessly to Jotunheim. And that would be worse. Fine, Volstagg sighed, hefting his axe. If you say so, I'll go. I won't let you die alone. Yes, live and die together, Fandral said, drawing his sword. Hogun silently gripped his mace tighter, showing his stance through action. Good brothers. Thor laughed, moved, slinging an arm around their shoulders. Let's go. Destination, Jotunheim. Chapter 23, Heimdall's Depression. The warriors 3 are stunned. Has Thor become Lucci's fanboy? At the control center of the Bifrost Bridge, beneath a magnificent golden dome. Heimdall, clad in golden armor and holding the Hofund, stood at his post like an eternal statue. His golden eyes, set to see through the 9 realms, were now distracted, reflecting lingering sorrow and confusion. Once again, his gaze fell upon Midgard, Earth, where he witnessed an irreversible tragedy. A small girl, trying to retrieve a ball rolling in the middle of the road, was about to be struck by a runaway truck. When Heimdall saw it, the truck was already too close. Everything was set. He saw the mother's heartrending scream, the panic and helplessness of bystanders, the young flower of life withering in an instant. And he, guardian of Asgard, claiming to watch over the 9 realms, could only do one thing. Watch it happen. Powerless. It wasn't the first time. His eyes had seen threats and disasters across all worlds. He saw interstellar pirates raiding caravans. He saw volcanoes erupt on distant planets. He saw cosmic storms swallowing civilizations. But he always saw the result, always saw things when they were already happening. When he saw them, it was often too late to stop them. Like the highest, most all-seeing, live broadcast viewer, he could watch every tragedy unfold, but couldn't press pause, much less go back and change the cause. Day after day. Year after year. This helplessness, like a dull knife, slowly wore down his will. He began to question the meaning of thousands of years of watching. If all he could do was watch tragedies happen, what was the difference between seeing and not seeing? Just as Heimdall sank into deep self-doubt, heavy footsteps sounded behind him. Thor and the warriors 3 approached. "Hey! Heimdall!" Thor's loud voice cut through Heimdall's thoughts. "Are you all right?" Heimdall came back to himself and looked at the 4 battle-ready figures. A hint of doubt appeared on his ancient face. "Prince Thor, where are you going?" "Jotunheim." Thor answered proudly. Heimdall frowned slightly, but when he saw the true Mjolnir in Thor's hand, much of his worry faded. Even so, he couldn't help warning them. "Your Highness, it is not wise to start a private war." "Don't worry," Thor said with a grin. "We're just going to beat up some long-eyed giants and protect the peace of the 9 realms." Then he noticed the gloom still on Heimdall's face. "What's wrong, Heimdall? You look distracted." Heimdall fell silent for a moment, sighed quietly, and briefly described what he'd seen in Midgard and the turmoil in his heart. "I don't understand. What is the meaning of watching like this?" The warriors 3 showed sympathy and understanding. They knew Heimdall carried pressures no ordinary person could imagine. But Thor's reaction was not what anyone expected. He simply shrugged, displeased. "I thought it was something serious," Thor said casually. "If you've got time to brood here, why don't you ask Loki?" "Ask him." Heimdall and the 3 warriors froze. They all turned at once, staring at Thor with expressions of shock, disbelief, and sheer weirdness. "Loki? That 4th prince of Asgard? Ask him." Those words came from Thor's mouth. In their impression, Thor had always been reckless and arrogant, convinced by no one but Odin. But now he was actually praising Loki. And he was even suggesting that Heimdall, the most knowledgeable guardian in the 9 realms, seek advice from Loki. Was the sun rising in the west? "Thor, you're not feverish, are you?" Fandral couldn't help reaching out, wanting to touch Thor's forehead. Get lost," Thor swatted his hand away. "What do you know? Loki, his wisdom is beyond imagination. This question should be easy for him." The 3 warriors' mouths fell open even wider. "This question? Easy? You've got to be joking." Even Heimdall's eyes flashed with surprise. He knew Loki was somewhat special, but he never imagined Loki could turn arrogant Thor into a Big Brother fanboy in such a short time. All right. Thor waved his hand. "Before you go find Loki, can you open the passage to Jotunheim for us? I don't want to wait here too long." Heimdall stared at Thor, then at Mjolnir. Feeling that unprecedented condensed aura, he finally nodded. "As you command, Your Highness." He thrust the Hofund into the console and murmured an ancient incantation. Rumble. The Bifrost's energy core began to run at high speed. A torrent of colorful energy surged into the sky, tearing open a colossal cosmic vortex in the void. "Let's go!" Thor roared, leading the charge with the warriors 3 into the passage to Jotunheim. Heimdall watched their figures vanish into the vortex and then close the bridge. He turned and looked across the palace, toward the quiet courtyard where Loki was. Thor's words had caused a great ripple in his heart. If Thor could be convinced. Could Loki really resolve the doubt that had tormented him for thousands of years? A strong curiosity, and a faint hope, quietly took root in Heimdall's heart. Once he was sure Thor's party was safe, he decided he would personally visit. The 4th Prince. Chapter 24, Thor shows his might, Heimdall is shaken. Going to seek guidance from Loki. Jotunheim. A realm shrouded in eternal ice and night. The sky was a dull lead gray. Jagged glaciers stretched to the horizon like the bones of colossal beasts. A biting wind howled, whipping ice crystals into the air and making the entire world look dead and desolate. Boom. A pillar of multicolored light tore through the silence and smashed into the vast ice field. The light faded, revealing Thor and the warriors 3 upon the frozen land. Ha! Frost giants. The Lord of Thunder is here. The moment he landed, Thor couldn't wait to roar provocatively, his voice echoing far across the empty ice plains. Soon, the ground began to tremble. From the shadows of the glaciers, frost giants, tall, blue-skinned, red-eyed, charged out with weapons forged from condensed ice, roaring as they came. Asgardian. Facing the enemy horde, the three warriors all wore solemn expressions and raised their weapons into defensive stances. But Thor's face was full of excitement and contempt. Good. He laughed loudly and rushed forward first, carrying Mjolnir like an unstoppable war chariot toward the densest group of giants. Thunderbolt. He swung the hammer. Thick chains of lightning erupted, instantly turning 7 or 8 frost giants at the front into charcoal. Immediately after, he threw the hammer into the sky and spun it at high speed. Chain lightning rained down like a storm, throwing the giant formation into chaos. Wherever it passed, ice shards and debris exploded into the air. The warriors 3 followed closely behind, guarding Thor's flanks. Volstag's great axe cleaved open and shut, splitting frost giants in half with each blow. Fandrel's swordplay was agile and swift, piercing throats from the most impossible angles. Hogun's mace was calm and lethal, each swing turning enemies into bloody pulp. The 4 of them were like a red-hot blade stabbing into the frost giants' cold front line, killing their way forward like a quartet of slaughter. But Jotunheim was, after all, the frost giants' homeland. The enemies were endless, surging from all directions. Gradually, the 3 warriors began to feel the strain. Their divine power drained rapidly, their breathing growing heavier. Thor. There are too many. Volstagg shouted, panting as he chopped down a giant. We've gone too deep. If Laufey comes personally, we'll all die here. Thor. We've proven Asgard's might, now it's time to retreat. Fandral urged. But surrounded by hundreds of giants, Thor showed no fear at all. He laughed instead. Retreat? No. This is only the beginning. He smashed aside the giants before him, then turned to the 3 warriors with a confident grin. That killer move of mine hasn't even been used yet. Killer move. The 3 warriors were dumbfounded. At a time like this you're still holding back. What kind of move is worth saving? Haha. Then open your eyes and watch. Thor roared, inhaled deeply, and recalled the 10,000 sovereigns thunder art Lucci had taught him. He no longer relied on brute force. He linked his divine soul with Mjolnir's spirit, connecting the laws of thunder between heaven and earth. By decree. Golden lightning flared in Thor's eyes. Thunder prison. Rumble. A terrifying thunder pressure, 10 times, even 100 times stronger than before, exploded outward from Thor. In the sky, endless golden sacred lightning answered his call, pouring down like a vast sea of thunder. This lightning was no longer a chaotic bombardment. Under Thor's will, it transformed into an enormous spherical prison forged of pure thunder and lightning. The thunder prison instantly engulfed every frost giant within a radius of 1 kilometer. ZZZRRT. The shrill screams lasted less than a second before stopping abruptly. Inside the thunder prison, countless bolts raged and tore everything apart. Those bodies of cold ice were as fragile as paper before the most blazing, most unyielding divine lightning, evaporating in an instant, leaving not even residue behind. When the light faded, the thousands of frost giants that had surrounded them were gone without a trace. Only a huge circular crater remained, its surface melted into glass, still exhaling greenish smoke. The battlefield fell into dead silence. The warriors 3 stared blankly at the miracle before them, then looked at Thor standing at the center of the crater, warhammer in hand like a king of thunder. Their minds went completely blank. This is what you meant by the true power of thunder. Volstagg stammered, nearly dropping his axe. Thor, how did you get this strong? Fandrel's voice trembled. Thor restrained the thunder around him and strode forward, pride written all over his face. Haha, this. Lucci taught me. If I hadn't mastered this power, how could I have dared to bring only the 3 of you to fight frost giants? Lucci. Again Lucci. Hearing that name, the 3 warriors exchanged looks, incomparable shock in their eyes. At last, they understood why Thor respected Lucci so much. On the Bifrost, Heimdall's gaze remained fixed on Jotunheim. When Thor displayed the devastating thunder prison and cleared the field in an instant, shock surged across even Heimdall's iceberg-like face, something that hadn't changed for thousands of years. This technique is strong. He was stunned by Thor's growth, and at the same time grew even more interested in the 4th prince, Lucci. Thor's party didn't seem to be in danger for the time being. Then, Heimdall withdrew his gaze from Jotunheim and looked toward Lucci's palace. Perhaps Thor was right. Perhaps it was time to consult Lucci. Perhaps he really could untie the knot in Heimdall's heart. Chapter 25, The Law of Time. Heimdall pays a visit, the meaning of watching over. Beside the world tree's root system, Lucci still sat quietly, as if his body had merged with the surroundings. In his perception, the formless long river called time was becoming clearer and clearer. It was no longer an abstract concept, but like a higher dimensional flow of information carrying everything's past and future streaming beside him. He could see the positions of dust motes in a moment of the past. He could see how a leaf above his head would fall at a moment in the future, even the slight deflection caused by wind not yet formed along its path. It was a profoundly mysterious sensation, like a two-dimensional figure in a painting becoming a three-dimensional observer who could not only see the whole painting, but even glimpse the pages before and after it. Your comprehension defies the heavens, you have sensed the flow of time. You are attempting to touch fragments of past information. You are capturing branches of possible future outcomes. You have gained insight into the operational mechanism of time as a fundamental law of the universe. Boom. In Lucci's mind, a new door to a supreme realm appeared, and swung open with a thunderous sound. Congratulations. Through comprehension, you have successfully grasped law of time, beginner. Though it was only an introduction, in that instant Lucci felt his very level of existence undergo a subtle leap. He still sat here, but his perception was no longer limited to the isolated time point called now. He could look back at the growth trajectory of the tree beside him, like flipping through pages of a book. He could also forecast, like reading a weather report, the most probable future within the next minutes or hours. Interesting. The corner of Lucci's mouth curved slightly. With a thought, he activated the time power he had just comprehended. In his eyes, images of the future flashed frame by frame like film clips. He saw Asgard's loyal guardian saint, Heimdall, appear at his palace with confusion and a trace of expectation. He even saw the unmelting melancholy on Heimdall's face and the question he kept turning over in his heart about the meaning of watching. Perfect timing. To test his control of time's power, Lucci did nothing. He only calmly turned his head to the palace entrance and waited. The palace maids assigned to attend Lucci were deeply puzzled. "Your Highness, what are you looking at?" "There's no one at the door," a young maid whispered. "I don't know." "Maybe he senses something," an older maid replied politely, eyes full of confusion. The fourth prince's actions are beyond guessing. None of them had ever seen Prince Lucci show a posture of waiting. He was always calm, as if nothing in the world concerned him. Time passed minute by minute. Just as the maids began to think this was another one of his trance-like states. Steady, powerful footsteps truly sounded from the courtyard entrance. A palace guard led a tall figure in heavy golden armor forward. It was Heimdall. The maid's eyes widened in shock. His Highness was really waiting for someone. Does His Highness have prophetic power? Their hearts pounded, and the awe in their eyes as they looked at Lucci only deepened. Heimdall stepped into the courtyard and saw the youth looking at him with calm composure. Their eyes met. Heimdall was startled. With eyes that could see through the 9 realms, he saw no surprise in Lucci's gaze at all. Those eyes were calm and deep, like an eternal starry sky, almost as if Lucci already knew he would come, and had been waiting here for a long time. The absurd thought flashed through Heimdall's mind, but he quickly rejected it. Impossible. He came only after hearing Thor's words. In all of Asgard, he alone knew of this decision. Prince Lucci couldn't have known in advance. "Prince Lucci," the guard said respectfully, "Lord Heimdall requests an audience." "You all may leave," Lucci said, waving to the guard and maids. Everyone withdrew. When only the 2 of them remained in the courtyard, before Heimdall could speak, Lucci's unhurried voice was already heard. "You want to ask about the meaning of watching over?" Boom. Heimdall froze as if struck by lightning. His iceberg-like expression shattered, revealing shock and fear beyond compare. His mind went blank. The very words he had repeated in his heart again and again were crushed by that single sentence. "Prince Lucci, why you? How do you know?" he blurted, his voice trembling, his honorific even changing unconsciously. Lucci smiled indifferently, raising his gaze to the world tree roots intertwined overhead. Then he spoke a sentence Heimdall couldn't understand, yet could feel contained ultimate truth. "Time told me." Time told him. Heimdall understood only half, and had no energy to dig into the meaning at this moment. A chill ran from his spine to the top of his head. The boy before him became more mysterious and unfathomable than the cosmic abyss within Heimdall's own heart. One thing was certain, this enigmatic fourth prince possessed unimaginable power, power beyond measure. Perhaps he truly could resolve Heimdall's doubts. With that thought, the last trace of hesitation in Heimdall's heart vanished. He cast aside pride and restraint, bowed deeply to Lucci, and asked humbly in the most sincere tone. Your Highness, you are correct. My eyes see everything that happens in the 9 realms, yet what I see is always only an irreversible outcome. I don't understand. Day after day, year after year, I stand here and watch countless tragedies unfold. What is the meaning of watching? P.S. Bonus chapter at 100 Power Stones. Chapter 26, Watching the Bifrost, Comprehending the Spatial Leap. Bestowing the Power of Time. Faced with Heimdall's ultimate question, one that had tormented him for thousands of years, Lucci did not give a direct answer. Because he knew, for Heimdall, whose resolve was firm yet whose spirit was trapped in a knot of anguish, mere preaching would have limited effect. A chain around the soul must be unlocked with a key from a higher dimension. The best way was to let Heimdall see the answer with his own eyes. Come with me. Lucci rose calmly, and Heimdall followed him to the Bifrost Control Center. This was the place Heimdall knew best, the post he had guarded for millennia. Beneath the magnificent golden dome, ancient and vast cosmic energy filled the air. Lucci ignored the Hofund and the console used to activate the Bifrost. With an indifferent expression, he walked to the edge of the dome and looked down at the endless, multicolored torrent below, a raging flood made purely of cosmic power. This torrent was not only the Bifrost's power source. It was also the main artery of the cosmic route connecting the 9 realms. Like a river of light formed by countless stars being crushed, converged, and forced into a single pulsing flow, it radiated a heartbeat-like force. Every time it was activated, that violent energy forcibly tore open the fundamental structure of space, creating a temporary wormhole connecting 2 distant points. Lucci's eyes quietly fixed on the magnificent torrent. With the dual blessing of eyes that shatter delusion and extraordinary comprehension, the seemingly crude but actually intricate principle of the Bifrost began to be analyzed and dissected in layers within his mind. You are observing the spatial teleportation principle of the Bifrost. Analyzing how the energy torrent distorts spatial dimensions. You gain insight into the structural essence of a wormhole. Enormous energy forcibly stabilizes the connection between 2 spatial points. You discover flaws in this transmission method: massive energy consumption, damage to spatial structure, slow startup speed, and rough coordinate placement. Too crude, Lucci thought. It's like performing surgery with an axe. Memories from his previous life flashed through his mind, various ideas about high-level cosmic teleportation. For example, spatial folding. The universe is not a smooth plane. It is filled with countless folds and hidden passages, like a gigantic sheet of paper that has been crumpled and rolled up. True spatial leaping is not ripping that paper apart by brute force. It is finding 2 distant points with precision and gently folding the paper, so the 2 points align instantly. That is how you achieve the fastest, farthest teleportation at the lowest cost. Your comprehension defies the heavens. You combine spatial folding theory to optimize the Bifrost propagation method. You begin deducing how to accurately locate the coordinates of cosmic folds. You are creating a new, more efficient, energy-saving, space-friendly method of cosmic transportation. A movement model is being constructed. Completed. Name it. This method is intended to explain the essence of spatial transition, spatial leap. Boom. The moment this technique was born, Lucci's understanding of the law of space surged to an entirely new height. He felt as if the space around him was no longer empty. Instead, it was covered in countless invisible intersecting silken threads and nodes. These threads connected every corner of the cosmos. With a mere thought, he could grasp one and easily pull 2 distant points closer together. Realizing all this, Lucci slowly turned and looked at Heimdall, who was still waiting patiently for an answer. His voice was calm and deep, as if it came from a higher dimension. Heimdall. Look at this Bifrost. Every time it activates, it requires enormous energy to forcibly tear open space. It's like a doctor cutting straight into a patient's chest to remove a tumor. You can achieve the goal, but the process is bloody, traumatic. But a wiser doctor would choose minimally invasive surgery, working with the body's original structure to reach the same goal at the lowest cost. Heimdall nodded in understanding. He could sense Lucci was using metaphor to guide him toward a deeper truth. Lucci continued, his voice striking straight to the heart. Your way of seeing is the same. What you're doing now is only watching the result after an irreversible tragedy occurs. It's like a doctor examining a corpse, you can only write a death report. Of course you feel powerless and in pain. But the ultimate purpose of observation is to change the cause before tragedy happens. Truly. Lucci's gaze sharpened, as though it could pierce Heimdall's soul. What you do is not merely watching. It is foresight and guidance. Foresight and guidance. Heimdall chewed on those words again and again. Lucci's voice rang in his mind like a morning bell and an evening drum, exploding through the dead-end fog that had trapped his spirit for millennia. As if the first light of creation suddenly tore through the mist and darkness in his heart. So that was it. He finally understood. His pain and helplessness had come from misplacing his responsibility. He had treated himself as the most intelligent, all-seeing spectator of tragedies, forced to watch them unfold again and again. What Lucci pointed to was an entirely new, higher-dimensional path. Intervening in the cause before everything happens. If he could foresee a small girl in Midgard running toward the road, he could send an unnoticed divine force in advance, roll the ball in the opposite direction, and end the tragedy at its source. If he could foresee a truck going out of control, he could send the driver a subtle psychic warning, prompting him to check the brakes or slow down without even knowing why. This was true watching. This was the mission and meaning he should embody as the guardian saint of the Nine Realms. Thousands of years of confusion, unlocked in an instant. Heimdall felt as though his soul had sublimated. His entire spiritual perspective refreshed, and in his golden eyes, a certain, burning light reignited. The light of finding the path. He turned toward Lucci and performed Asgard's oldest, noblest salute. Your Highness, your wisdom is as deep as Yggdrasil, and it illuminates the road before me. Heimdall is taught. But after bowing, he rose with a bitter smile. However, Your Highness, the foresight you speak of already involves the mysterious domain of time, something even the All-Father cannot reach. My eyes can see through space, but I am always bound to the moment of now. I cannot do it. It was like finding a treasure map while being poor, only to learn the treasure was locked behind a door that could never be opened. The hope hurt more than the despair. But seeing Heimdall's agitation, Lucci merely smiled faintly. Who said you can't? He extended his right index finger. At his fingertip, a faint aura quietly condensed, the law of time. It wasn't dazzling, yet it seemed to contain every mystery of the cosmos from birth to destruction. From today onward, you can. Before the words fully fell, Lucci flicked his finger. That aura surpassed the very concept of distance, vanishing instantly into Heimdall's eyes. Buzz. Heimdall felt warmth and cold wash through his eyes, as if he were cleansed by the spring of the universe's origin. Then, his world changed. In his vision, beyond the sharply defined present, countless layers of faint future phantoms appeared, rippling like water. This is. Heimdall was unimaginably shaken. His heart felt as if it would burst from his chest. I granted you a fragment of the power to peer into the long river of time, Lucci said calmly. But this kind of power places tremendous burden on the soul and divine body. With your current level, do not peer too far into the future. Otherwise, you will be overwhelmed by the torrent of information in the river of time, at best driven mad, at worst erased. Heimdall steadied himself and hurriedly turned his gaze back to Midgard. Within minutes, he easily saw a minor rear-end collision that would occur on a street in New York. He could even make out the license plates and the faces of the owners arguing after getting out of their cars. But when he tried to look further ahead, hours into the future, needle-like pain stabbed through his mind. His mental power drained rapidly. Heat rose in his nose, and a thin line of golden divine blood flowed down. He immediately understood Lucci's warning. This power was mighty, and terrifyingly dangerous. He withdrew his gaze at once, shock surging through him like monstrous waves. Lucci had casually pointed a finger. And truly given him something. The power of time. What terrifying divine power. This was no longer the power of a god. It was a creator's method. Who, exactly, was Prince Lucci? Heimdall could no longer suppress his excitement and awe. He dropped to one knee before Lucci, lowering the proud head he had held high for thousands of years. Thank you for your guidance and gift. Heimdall will never forget. His voice trembled with emotion. Your wisdom transcends space. Your power transcends time. From this moment onward, Asgard's most loyal guardian saint became one of Lucci's most fervent, fanatical supporters. He secretly swore that with these eyes that can foresee the future, he would remove every obstacle from Prince Lucci's path.